Hi, everyone. Welcome to Tech Talks. Today we have it's not 5 million ENTPs.
Four and potentially a fifth.
One
Potentially a
hypothetical.
fifth, yeah.
Yeah, potentially 5 ENTPs. And so, Prem, would you like to tell us a bit about you?
Sure, I have a YouTube channel called Pop-Up Existence that you can check right down, where I explore existential topics like, does circumstance really matter? And is getting happiness from circumstance, your happiness being dependent on a circumstance, is that really happiness? Stuff like this. I explore in my channel. Do check it out. I'll hand it over to Scott.
I'm Scott. I've been a software developer for about 30 years now. I have 2 kids, married to the INFP of my dreams, and got into Myers-Briggs in the 90s, certified, have been kind of using it on the edges, and now I'm kind of getting back into it. And Joyce invited me to be on this panel, so here I am.
This panel is going to be filled with goofballs of amazing proportions. And so, Boris?
Yeah, my name is Boris, and I also write software. It's better than Scott's, even though I haven't seen it yet. I run a Toronto-based MBTI group, but by fluke. I originally thought MBTI was bullshit. The group taught me otherwise. Now I run it, and that's how I know Joyce. And I've been loitering in these panels because I heard eventually you get paid.
She's not paying you yet, Boris?
You didn't get paid, Scott?
She paid me. I got in advance.
See, I knew it. We'll talk afterwards. Sorry, Jeffrey. Next.
Yeah, no worries. I'm Jeffrey. I also have a YouTube channel like Prem. My channel is called AutoAlchemy. I do a lot of videos on typology. I do some more like informational, educational stuff, as well as one of my weird side hobbies for years now is actually rapping. So I have some MBTI raps showcasing the various personalities, kind of in a very like low level, stereotypical caricature form. And beyond that, let's see. I haven't mentioned this online at all yet, but Friday, I interviewed for grad school. I'm thinking about becoming a marriage and family therapist, and I want to bring typology into that and kind of like explore the limits of that. So we'll see. That's where I'm hoping to head in the future. Yeah.
I just need to get married so we can talk about something, but that shouldn't be too hard, right? Right after COVID, there'll be desperation everywhere.
Hopefully,
Get married so you can meet Jeffrey in the therapist's office.
I might still get divorced, but that's okay. I mean,
okay.
It's no measure. It says more about me than you, right?
Yeah.
And so Jeffrey has some really rad raps, and I will show a clip of it at the end of the interview. So stay tuned for that. And yeah, go check out Jeffrey's channel, AutoAlchemy, and also Pop-Up Existence. It is all the good times in a video, in videos. Cool. And so on the topic of many interests that Jeffrey mentioned, a theme of the ENTP personality is having a lot of interests or being a polymath or a multi-potentialite in some sort of way. And so in what ways do you have a plethora of things that you find interesting or that you dabble in?
So I'll go first. Sorry, go on. You have, Boris? Anything?
Go.
Aren't you an amazing salsa dancer or tango? Which one is it?
If you take the amazing away, I would say salsa, then West Coast swing. I would say decent. 7 on a pretty aggressive scale, but wait a sec, that's interesting. You're telling me about my interests? What are you trying to hide, Prem? What are you trying to hide?
What I'm trying to hide? I think here's a predicament, right, that I think all ENTPs would face, is that I have too many, I feel, callings. I don't have like one calling. And every time I follow like one calling, I feel as though I'm missing out on the other ones. It feels like, so I have a YouTube channel, I talk about existence and stuff. But I really wanted to play guitar and stuff like that. And I got a guitar, right? But after I started playing guitar, I really feel like I want to like do watercolor painting.
Try finger painting, less of a commitment.
And then I was actually researching on how to become a therapist and stuff on the side. Whilst I'm actually doing my master's in artificial intelligence and having a current job, And I'm like, I feel if I don't pursue all of this at the same time, I'm going to miss out. However, the sad truth is I have to choose. And that is because death awaits, right? And that is the predicament that I feel. What about you, Scott?
It's interesting because, I've been in the ENTP longer, and
but not necessarily better.
not better. And I found the tendency to prune down the possibilities, trying to find the ones that'll pay off the most. And I think you can get caught in a loop doing that as well, where you kind of get paralyzed. You don't feel like you can do anything, But I went through the same thing. I did wildlife rehabilitation. I did.
Well,
Yeah, we did. I've done the medieval reenacting, and played the harp, bought bagpipes, took a few lessons.
just a few.
I've done a lot of choral stuff. Not so much anymore. I got busy. But when I was at university, I was at an engineering school, and I took French. Because just to broaden the things I was doing. Plus, someday I was hoping to speak French. You can imagine how that's turned out as an ENTP, but it's been fun. So yeah, that's been my experiences. I did all those things, and then you say, well, it's not going anywhere. None of this goes anywhere. But I did run into a comment. It might have been on Personality Hacker podcast, where they described an ENTP as serially monogamous with hobbies.
High frequency. Oh, I call it. I'm a serial monogamist with high frequency.
Yes. Yeah, that's right. So we will dive into something, and then we'll shift and dive into something else. Not that we're doing it always at the same time, but it's okay. And it's kind of gave me permission to say, okay, it's okay that you only spend a few months, studying Karl Marx, and then all of a sudden you find yourself binge watching Doctor Who. Not that there's necessarily connection. Somebody's written a dissertation somewhere, I'm sure, but
absolutely.
Yeah, but that really kind of gave me a little more perspective on how to manage all my crazy, wild NE interests.
I think the problem that you're trying to highlight, Scott, is the fact that anytime you try to get into something, it's really hard to foresee if this would bring you long-time fulfillment. You don't actually know. I feel I'm lucky stumbling across my YouTube channel and making it, because I find so much fulfillment that now that I think about it, I know I wouldn't get that even if I learned guitar. You know what I mean? I know this doing YouTube is some quote unquote more meaningful than guitar. However, it's very hard to foresee that. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so ENTPs or NP types are the most well known for having interest or idea or concept phases where they have intense interest during a few months of one thing, learning everything, absorbing it, and then maybe finding a new area of interest that also piques their interest and then switching to that for a while. So yeah, it's really, really fascinating.
One nice thing about that, though, is that by the time if you learn to play the guitar and you've done YouTube and you've done water painting, watercolors, you move through, a lot of times that seemingly unrelated things will come together.
Mm-hmm.
Like your watercolor studies will give you an insight into, studying
YouTube
languages
channel
of the African savannah.
You know what?
You just never, it's all valuable to me. Everything I do, everything I read, I put it away, and it will all get put together into one big glorious mental model.
Yeah, that's exactly how I feel as far as doing the raps on my YouTube channel. That was never something that I anticipated doing. But as far as, when I was 13 years old, I was on hip hop, written battle websites, participating in them and fighting with other people and crafting words and having fun playing with words in a very stereotypically ENTP way. And when I made my channel, I was thinking purely I want to get better at teaching information that I'm learning and that I'm taking in. I want to kind of balance myself out in that capacity. And then somehow it became obvious that I should meld the two together and create these musical distillations of everything that I was learning.
Yeah, and what I want to say in general is, and I think again the same drift here, I have spent a lot of time doing a lot of different things, but there's never a regret. There's never saying, oh, I don't like this thing. It's I'm glad how much I know about this. I'm going to keep it. So I cherish most of these things. It's not like, oh, oh, this was a waste of time, right? And as Scott said, in the end, they all come together. Sometimes even the ability to talk to people that are artistic. My current main client, it's an architecture firm. I just got there by fluke because I was helping a friend to find a job as an admin, and she told me, oh yeah, they have this position. Nah, not interested. It's these random events by being open to experience and pivot that in the end pay off. And then, for example, being able to have a discussion about something of a specific topic with somebody at work who happens to be in a position of interest, you're able to establish a rapport based on your collection of all these little things that make you appealing, at least to the kind of people you want to appeal to, and often they're in a power position. So I have no regrets really in that regard.
I would like to say two things. I think because of this reason, I think we are mostly like super multifaceted. We have like so many different sides, or might not be like super deep, but we do have certain good amount of knowledge about most things. And also, I feel like the knowledge that I feel at least I'm gathering is more, I feel, philosophical in nature. I feel every skill has the same philosophies, but they emphasize on different aspects of philosophy. Like when I was learning watercolor, there was this quote. They said, you have to produce a lot of bad things so the good ones can follow. And that I learned in a watercolor book, right? And I realized, oh my God, this is a mistake I'm doing with my YouTube channel. I'm trying to produce the best video, So I have to produce a lot of bad videos so the good ones can follow. I learned this from watercolor painting.
Right.
It's the Elon Musk approach. Plan to fail, just be prepared to learn from it. It's okay to fail, but it's not okay if you say, I didn't learn anything. Then that's a wasted failure, right? But that really happens, right?
And I find value in nuggets like that,
Yeah, it's refinement over perfection. So as long as you're refining as you're going, that's better than trying to get it perfect on the one go. Yeah. And
I was wondering, Scott, in software, sometimes I can be a selectively anal slob. Like when it comes to software, I get really, really picky sometimes. I just wonder if Scott is the same thing about how you structure things.
I'm a little more what Joyce was saying, because I will kind of write down the bones, the important parts, and then I'll iterate back and progressively I'll fill in. I kind of know what all the bits that have filled in are, so I'm comfortable just going end to end and making sure everything's going to flow and fit together. Then I can start dropping in the pieces that I know I need to have. And occasionally I forget one.
I'm not disagreeing with you, actually. I'm doing the same, but I said sometimes there's some habits that I have formed that I'm really, maybe that's SI sticking up, that I really defend. Like there's certain coding styles. For example, you have a bunch of if else. Always have an else in the end because you want to fill it in. If people just say if this, do that, I'm like, no, I want an if and else and an other. And if somebody doesn't do that, it pisses me off.
And I always consider those sort of practices intuitive, in the sense that I can't, when I'm looking at somebody else's code, I can't say you need to make sure you have an else there because this is going to happen if you don't. But I know that eventually something's going to happen. Just intuitively, I don't have the exact date or exactly what's going to happen, but the pattern. I'm a pattern guy. The pattern is this is your danger point. That's going to maybe not now, but when you make a change without thinking about it later on.
So it's really just certain abstract principles that piss me off. If somebody does that, you have an enumeration of what could happen, have an other and throw up an error because should never happen, or do a debug assert or whatever.
Oh yeah, no. This works. What could possibly go wrong?
It's like,
now my pessimism kicks in. It's like, oh, let me give you a list.
So
this is what piques my curiosity. Joyce, from your perspective, what are you doing differently? Because for me, what I'm doing, it just makes sense. Like from your perspective, how do you view us?
A lot of information storehouses. The thing is, when I have
a storehouse, right? Okay, never mind.
Yeah, like when I have friends who have very strong extroverted intuition, whenever I talk to them, it's always about the thing that they're learning a lot about at that moment. So I'm pulled into the wave of whatever new information that they're gaining. And I'm like, ooh, okay, you're into Tibetan Buddhism now. All right, cool.
Let me tell you about that. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, all of this information I didn't know that I needed to know. It's interesting for sure. I like the philosophical routes that they go down for sure. I sometimes wonder where they're leading with it. So I try to predict what kind of conclusion you're trying to aim for, but I realize it's not always the conclusion that's important. Sometimes
That's
the
an I.
exploration.
We don't have to have.
You are frequently disappointed, Joyce. Yeah.
I think I might have an answer to that. I only recently realized what I'm actually seeking, at least philosophically, in my spirituality, you might say. What I'm seeking personally, which I think most of you might agree, is freedom, but not freedom from like the suffering aspect, but freedom from everything. Not having a feeling like the life controls us in any aspect. Not being its slave, but rather having a command or a freedom of choice. I feel sometimes you feel so constricted by emotions, suffering, this guy, that guy, family, whatever, to take a certain route. However, what I'm seeking is like a complete freedom, like freedom.
Yeah, and that touches upon the fixation of EPs. So the ENTP is an EP, and that's not wanting to feel caged, wanting to keep your options open, wanting to not be restricted, not be trapped, not be
to be prepared, like Boris alluded to. I want to know what the contingencies are if these other things happen. I'm ready to master the situation, and that would map back to freedom. Not wanting to be controlled by the situation, but wanting to be in control of the situation.
Yeah. You're very Enneagram 7 wing 6, Scott.
Wait, I think even I'm 7 wing 6,
7
right?
wing 6.
That's what I don't know.
I think
what
I'm 7 wing 8. How are me and Scott different? Because I totally agree with what he says, but you might know more about him than I do.
Oh, maybe I'm wrong.
Oh no! I'm not trying to share. I'm curiosity. I identify as 7 wing 8. Would you say I'm a 7 wing 6?
Okay, so the next topic is. You talked a bit about wordplay, Jeffrey, and so I was wondering maybe we could transition to that.
Yeah. It's just been a very natural part of my life for as long as I can remember. Even as a kid, I remember the first time I used to hate music up until the age of 7 or so. And then one day I was listening to a country song of all things on the radio because my parents were driving and that's what they were listening to.
Do you remember the song by any chance?
I don't actually remember the song, but I remember the weird sense of alignment when I realized that rhyming was actually a thing. Like these words fit together in some way that I can't fully wrap my head around in my child brain.
You can't wrap your head around it?
And so, there was an immediate like latching onto that and a fixation on that. And I don't know, it's just always been fun. Like so many things in life are like so heavy-handed or so serious. And that's one area where I seek my freedom, is this like completely carefree ability to play with words. And it becomes also an expression of a more NT process where, I want this sound to slot in here and I want this sound to slot in here. And eventually it becomes like this weird verbal architecture. And I don't know. And then obviously with friends and stuff, you develop these inside jokes, and inside jokes also typically revolve around wordplay. So I don't know. It's like a place of relief in my life, I feel.
I think the part where you said I like the words fitting in like a certain place, that's what fascinates me about music, because I listen to a lot of Japanese music and I'm like, what NT model are they following where they're like generating this? I want to understand that model. That piques my curiosity, and that's why I'm learning guitar.
You realize you have to learn Japanese first.
Hey, I think I watched enough animes.
You can do that in a weekend.
My weekend, what's funny?
We think we'll know it in a weekend.
I actually wanted to go to Japan rather than coming to Canada. So I finished N5 Japanese language proficiency test, and I failed N4. That's why I ended up coming to Canada. But God bless, I wouldn't have survived in Japan. Yeah, it's so much paperwork, I would be dead, dude. What about you, Scott? You play bagpipes, right? What do you like about playing?
He plays with bagpipes.
I own bagpipes. I used to write. I write poetry and music in college, and when I was doing the SCA, the medieval Renaissance stuff, I produced stuff. And yeah, I love the structure, because you'll start a new project and you'll have in mind a slightly different structure. Could I do this? The rhyming scheme, or go for more this theme, and how do the words play into that? I do love puns, much to my my partner's chagrin. The line in our household is, if we're out in public and somebody laughs at something I say, my wife's like, "Don't laugh. It only encourages him." I have to live with him. I have to go home with this guy. But I think I've passed it on to my children, so I'm pretty happy. Yeah. So they got something out of it. Yeah, I love wordplay, and if someone says something, I will pick up a word and think, I'll flip the meaning to the other meaning of the word, a synonym, and just think, what does that sentence say now? Mostly in my head, but occasionally I'll try and make a joke.
I would say this, now that thinking back, I do like in the wordsmith way, where I try to frame sentences which eliminates most of the possible interpretations. Like, I don't like if a sentence is like super vague. I recently interviewed this person called Shan from Objective Personality System. I was like, what questions that I can ask such that she understands it without me having to like explain it further. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I was like trying to frame a question where there are not many ways you can like think about it.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, writing an email, you've got to, or it's going crazy. You're going to lose all communications.
Yeah.
This might not be an E, but I think there is really something that I appreciate, and probably other ENTPs. It's precision of definition, because some people you have conversations with, and it's just, it drives you nuts. They have, everything falls apart. You can't even have a discussion. And one prerequisite of being able to play with things, you have to really understand them, which means there has to be a definition there. And I find it really challenging when I'm faced with somebody and I find out they have a wishy-washy definition. They're not even aware of it, and then they change it halfway through. That's one of the few things that can get me frustrated and disinterested in a person, because
trying
you
to keep
can't
that
play
to
with them.
myself, though, right? It's like, you don't want to. I know an ENTJ who would drag the conversation out into why the definition's wrong. Personally, I try to keep it on the inside, but I get
challenge
it
accepted.
You know what's funny? You know what's funny on this? I was recently having a conversation where I was trying to figure out meaning. I was reading this book called Man's Search for Meaning. So I'm like, what is exactly meaning? I want to understand what that even word means. So I Google the word, meaning, whatever, like meaning definition, something like that. So according to Google, meaning means to mean something. Right? I'm like, bro, what is this? This doesn't make sense. How does this make sense?
The ENTP experience for me is when you realize that it's not that they may have a precise definition of the word they're meaning, but it's not yours. And so you both using the same word, and you're really meaning different things by it.
That is okay.
My response is always to ask, why?
That is
What's the motivation of this person? How did they get there? And I just go down that rabbit hole deep. Like, why would they say that? And then you're like, oh, that's how they get there. And then, of course, the conversation's moved on, and you don't know what they've said. So, and you just nod and smile.
Oh, Hevander, I'm just texting with him. Our potential fifth. I don't know if he's going to make it, but he just got back online. So, Joyce, when he comes in, he'll knock on your door, right? Nothing's closed, correct?
Yeah. I'll see it when he.
I don't know if he does. He's just typing.
Prem is banished. How dare he being late for such a long time? I'm just kidding.
We'll just give him the dirty look. We'll stare at him.
We'll happy shame him.
It's only been 45 minutes.
He's ENTP. I mean, that's pretty good, right? I mean,
look at this past of like
better than the ENTPs that took an hour and a half to get started, right? So.
That's getting edited out.
What do you feel, Joyce? Do you feel like you have precise definitions, or even care about definitions, or even have that problem in the first place?
Well, I start up with the assumption that everyone, like, when we picture a word, it's all different within different people's heads. So, like, even when someone tells me, hey, I'm Christian or something, I don't assume that it's like the blanket textbook Christian. I'm like, okay, what is Christianity to you? Like, how do you process it? like I'm trying to figure out the Ferrari in people's minds is kind of how I like to put it. Like, all right, so you have this complex way of thinking about it. How do you think about it? Is where I would go first.
So you're assuming that people are operating with some sort of TI when a lot of people might not be. And that's how I think about it anyway. Like I do the same thing in some respect, where I do assume that people have this like intricately worked out definition, even if it isn't my definition. And often it is disappointing to see those definitions unravel when there's nothing underneath.
Absolutely. That was so well put, Jeffrey. Yeah.
Oh, thanks.
Let's continue on the track. We
were on the track. There's a track to this.
I'm here to rein in the tangents. Yeah, awesome. And so we talked to, so Jeffrey brought up the point about mental models, and so I'm wondering about your relationship with that, everyone.
Do you guys want to go super existential?
Go for it.
So here's what I'm wrestling with, right? Like years I've read like millions of books. I don't know how many. Of self-development, you know, how do you fix stuff? You have a problem, how do you fix this problem? Studying humans, because I thought even MBTI, right? You think you'll get MBTI, then you'll understand others and like fix your problems and you'll be more happy, right? But here's the thing though, I realized recently, so much of my happiness is dependent on circumstances that's totally not under my control. Like, let's say I have a conversation with you. You're going to interpret it a certain way. Now, I don't have control over that, you know. But if I depend my happiness on that interpretation, then my happiness is as good as winning a lottery, you know. You might win it, you might not win it. And if your state of being is really dependent
on... So it's 50-50, right? Like any lottery, you either win or you don't.
So the question is, question is here, is the happiness which is brought by such a dependency, is that even happiness? And if that's not happiness, then what does happiness really even look like? You know?
Well,
I don't know.
I have some thoughts about that, which maybe this is not like the kind of response you're hoping for, but what I see in that is actually this very like intellectualizing process of creating a mental model of what happiness is. What does it mean for me to be happy? And I think speaking existentially, like from the inside as like an embodied human being, if you were, well, maybe you're happy. I don't want to make any assumptions about whether or not you are happy, but typically when you are, if you're happy in the way that I'm thinking, then you don't ask those questions to begin with. Like the model doesn't become necessary until you, you know what I mean?
No.
If you're happy and you know it, clap your hands. Okay.
No, I understand. No, I completely agree. I just wanted to understand the mechanism where people are like randomly tuning into happiness, tuning out of happiness, tuning into happiness. I'm like, yo, what is going on, you know?
Mm-hmm. Like
but
the temporary
you want
treadmill,
to be both, right? You want to be an observer. I mean, for me, that's just one thing I want to say. Maybe I believe it's very ENTP typical, is being sort of a detached observer of almost everything, including self. It's I experience myself, but I'm observing myself, and it kind of, as a consequence, makes one probably fairly resilient towards dealing with adversity or challenging moral questions that get other people riled up. Because if you're always a distant sort of detached observer, you have sort of a buffer. I don't know if you guys can relate to that. I would.
No, I can see. No, I can see what you're saying. Yeah, it's interesting.
As a no, as a no, yes.
No. As in no.
Triple no. No. Yes.
Yeah, it is interesting because now the question is, how do you define happiness? Now everyone has their own definition of happiness.
Definition, back to the critical point.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm realizing this problem is even arising because I don't have a proper a personal definition of what happiness is. When I track happiness, I'm just looking, okay, this guy's happy, this guy's happy, this guy's happy, this guy's happy. I'm also happy sometimes. I know why they're happy, but it's very hard to like twist that inside, you know? And then see, okay, what makes you happy?
Is that the curse of being logically detached from situations and yourself? Is that you spend so much time analyzing whether we're happy that we forget to be happy?
No, I feel I have a bias over truth than any emotions, you know.
Overrated, right?
Yeah, it's overrated. Yeah.
The truth causes me so many problems.
Yeah.
The thing I've experienced is, in dealing with people and trying to understand points of view and new situations is they'll present me with all the facts of the situation, and I cannot understand it. It is just chaos until I understand the overall pattern. I always need the pattern. I think of it as, and this is my mental model, is that it's like a frame with wooden dowels on it, and all the facts and elements of the world really are like wooden discs with holes in them. And I have to slide the discs onto the dowels. And so if you give me a whole bunch of them, like when I deal with, sensors, they're, the SSEs are just giving me all the facts, and I'm sure in their mental model, they're just piling them into a nice stack, and it's beautiful. To me, it's just a pile of facts with no relation to each other, and I don't know what to do with it until I take the first one and I put it on my model, and then they start falling into place, and then anything I would say, it kind of goes whoosh. Everything starts to make sense.
Oh, sexy man finally joined us.
All right.
Okay. I'm
there he
here.
is.
Hello.
You're less than an hour late. That's awesome.
Oh man, that's a call out.
Did you tie the person up that kept you busy? Make sure they can breathe. COVID's around the corner. I'm just kidding. I'm kidding.
Boris is part of the talk group, apparently.
I barely know the guy.
And you wonder, why do I get bullied? Who bullies me? People like Boris, the culprit. Yeah,
it's just people who call me out on being late. Okay, but it's all good. It's all good.
Yeah.
Hi everyone.
Hi there.
Hevander.
Nice to meet you, Hevander.
Nice to meet y'all.
Yeah, we're talking about mental models right now.
Ooh, mental models.
Yeah.
Like
And
paradigms or what exactly?
whatever you want it to be. That's the beauty. We've had four
Yeah.
different interpretations. Everybody just talks what they feel like. So.
Okay.
Let me just give you a little bit of context. Scott was
pressure.
talking about mental models, right? And I think one thing, point of that is, I feel as an NE user, you have a lot of personalized models, for very specific situations. I don't feel I have one model that I use in every situation. I rather have very specific models that I use it in a very specific scenario. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
you can talk about that now.
And to bring the context, I mean, Hevander, and this is your own story. I guess we were trying to say we have a tendency to, in our own heads, in a very individualistic way, represent certain things in an analogy kind of model. And I remember you told me a story the other day. You might want to tell yourself, but it fits in that context, right? You don't have to, but remember the chain or the necklace or whatever you told us.
Oh yes, yeah, those sort of mental models. It's sort of like I don't know. I feel like I have a good enough grasp of NE that I know how to feed into it. So for me, since I was a kid, it was feeding NE was just put as much information in there as possible so that you can sort of reconfigure into whatever you want to. And sometimes let's say when it comes to challenges, it's not, let's say, the most readily available option to go straight to okay, TI. I use TI a lot just because life. Got to filter through life and everything like that, and school, academics, and jobs and everything like that. But when it comes to let's say unknown problems, it is very much an NE task. So for me, my first experience with let's say using this mental model of let's say for a particular task was when I was really not super young, but it was 5th grade. And the class was given this task of let's say basically creating a circuits. So it was a series and parallel circuits, and a series circuit was it was easy for everyone to figure out. But then the whole class had to collaborate for this parallel circuit because it was pretty hard. I mean, we were collaborating for the series as well, but the parallel one was the one that was taking the longest. And it's not that I was thinking exactly okay. TI thinking okay, because here are the principles of what I see. It's no, it wasn't that at all. It's very much just going through this. I had this I know I had this assumption since around 3rd grade of this idea of form follows function, and I still sort of follow this sort of idea for certain things. and I've used that as a probe for, let's say, unknowns. And so I remember specifically actually thinking of shapes. Like they just give us like basically like parts and say like do a parallel circuit. You can't cut the wires or anything like that. So all wires have to stay connected and everything like that. And I basically thought of like I ended up thinking of like an Egyptian necklace because I was super into like Egyptology, and so a lot of the images I saw, like a lot of like forms I saw, were like Egyptian themed. I watched Yu-Gi-Oh! I watched like different things like that.
Yeah.
And but particularly, I sort of just like my mind just sort of like made up a shape, and that was like furnished like an Egyptian necklace, but wasn't a typical Egyptian necklace. And I was like, okay, that looks like what I want. And so I literally just sort of like started adjusting the wires until like okay, I was like super shy at this time too. I was like acting like a super shy boy, like I was like some sort of like INFP person, but not at all. But yeah, I started. No, I love INFPs. INFPs are good. They're amazing.
Best
people.
friends are INFPs.
Oh no, they're amazing people.
He's only married to one, so be careful what you say.
No, but yeah, I just started adjusting the wires. How I sort of like saw this necklace in my head, and then like I had the rationale came later of like, oh, it would happen because like it's like if you imagine water flowing, it'll go down this route, down that route, and so like I clearly remember intuition being like the first like immediate I don't know, like the model that I used to problem solve, and then like the TI came later of like, okay, I see how this works and everything like that. But it was very much so like an intuitive process of just like, oh, okay, here's a shape, form follows function, and here's a shape that like looks like what I want. And yeah, so that's sort of like that was just like my most like I guess profound memory of like first of like strongly using any first for like to get a grip at the world and everything like that.
Can you tell me more about form follows function? What do you mean exactly?
Can
you give me another example?
Yeah, so let's see. So if I trying to think of another example, but like honestly, like almost like you can think of like the way of like in the idea of tools. I think tools is a very easy idea. It's so like wrenches or screwdrivers and anything like that. Like you don't have to like really know like okay,
so based on the form you deduce a function. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, basically like that. Or you can say like function follows form. I've heard of that.
Well, these are two different things. That's why he's asking. I think for him the definition is probably implicit, so he tries to probe.
Yeah. No. Well, for me, like I've heard the term like that. I've heard the term, but I think function follows the form is a little bit more.
At least I haven't heard both sides. So, yeah.
Yeah, but that's just a bit of a mental model that I guess I've had like.
Maybe it's a Canadian thing. Yeah, I don't know.
It's all good.
He's not Canadian.
Oh, you're not Canadian.
I'm not. Yeah. I'm down here in the U.S.
Okay. Maybe it's an America thing. Yeah.
I don't know where I heard it, but it was a long time ago, and it just stuck in my mind, and it just seemed like an accurate enough model to keep. Like it's not going to help me in like actually no, it actually did help me in like differential equations. I remember
You needed help on that? Aren't they intuitive? I thought
no.
That
was like one of the that was one of like the classes that I actually like. Okay, it's like some classes are super like calculatory when it comes to math, but then there's some that you could just like snap into. It's sort of weird. So differential equations was one class that like I actually felt strong intuition for because it's like just like
we hate you.
No, it was like
great.
I agree.
That's amazing. Yeah, I've never had that experience snapping into it, but I can see where once you kind of get the groove of it, it's like, well, this all makes sense.
You mean Schrödinger's equation? You can't look at it, see the beauty in it, and oh my goodness!
I do want to call out that his first story actually illustrated the first discussion we had on this podcast, which was how nothing goes to waste when you're an ENTP. Everything you've ever learned, even if they seem completely unrelated, watercolor and Prem was talking about, you'll take this bit over here and you'll bring in Yu-Gi-Oh,
Yes.
You go and bring it into electrical engineering, and oh yeah, now it makes sense.
He had an he saw an Egyptian documentary. He saw an abstract analogy behind the scenes. Intuition gave him a shape which has a functional analogy to what he's trying to solve.
Yeah, honestly,
and
like it's nice, but it's like I feel like for me it's like I've noticed like as I've gotten adulting and gotten like my life has gotten a little bit more you know, not so colorful. I've sort of like lacked on the creative expression, and that makes me actually like I've noticed that actually like made me lose just this sort of natural vibrancy that sort of like helped my intuition to like grab at more things. And so I've actually been like counteracting that recently, like since like last year, by just reading more books, fantasy books, because I used to do it as a kid.
Fantasy?
Yeah, fantasy books, or even like I've always watched like history documentaries, so at least I'm not lacking that. But let me just finish the differential equations thing. So it's like you actually start noticing that like a lot of the solution are just like, you know, e to the power blah 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 blah, or like cosine some sine e to the power blah 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 on the other side and everything. And so you sort of like looking at one side of the equation, it's like if I just flip flop this here and there, it's like there's a consistent sort of pattern that like they can kind of just like that gives you like at least like the general answer, and then all you get to find out is like, okay, what's the coefficient now? It's like, okay, let me just look for the coefficient. And that was like the one class, like, so like I remember like up to like sophomore year I was like struggling in school just because like of bad SI habits, as in like literally even since high school I wasn't a person that like did homework much, and it's not because like, oh, I feel like I'm so smart. It's more just like because I'm family issues and also laziness. And the family issues actually did take up a lot of my day, and I couldn't really and it's sort of like made me into like if it sort of makes you feel like, oh, you did so much work already that's not related to school, like yeah, school is whatever, as long as I pass the test, I'll be fine. But like that sort of like garnered this sort of like created this habit in me of like just not studying enough or not doing homework enough and all that sort of stuff. So my grades were pretty in the dumps. So but like so like in terms of like I guess the intellectual confidence, I was kind of low until differential equations happened. I was like, oh, I'm back.
That's easy to me. They're struggling. Why are they struggling?
Yeah. I was like, I'm back. I can
Interesting that you mentioned that.
You know, man.
Oh, sorry. Feynman had this thing about differentiating on the integral sign. It's really, you look at some patterns and you subconsciously find a class of function that behave a certain way, so you should develop a shortcut, right? It's again sort of that weird pattern analogy. And I think we should give Joyce Joyce a word. We don't want to all talk about differential equations, right?
Oh, can we? We can totally talk about that.
Oh, cool. Okay, let's go. No.
Yeah. Something that is coming up over and over again is this element of collaging. So it's like taking these different things from different disciplines and then collaging them together and using it all in this idea collage or this talent collage. Yeah, this collage.
Yeah, but I feel there's an underlying stacking
pattern
going on.
Oh,
no, not pattern, but stacking like the philosophies, you know, that connects the collage. Like if you have a collage, behind that there's like a blank board, right? That board I feel
is framework. Yeah.
That board I feel is built on your personal experiences. You know what I mean?
SI board.
It's almost the analogy, a neural network in computer science or AI, right? It's because you have different layers, it builds on it, and then all of a sudden you have this general purpose solution engine, which really is just training different layers. I mean, you're probably the expert on it by now, but
yeah.
Well, I'm doing my master's in that. But what I'm trying to like say is, I feel the experience that happens to me, I feel is very pivotal and plays a very important role on what collages is made. You know what I mean? Like my life circumstances, I feel plays a very important role on then the perspective and then the interest, collecting the collage on all stuff like that is what I'm trying to like point to. Do you guys agree?
Yeah.
Wasn't it Jung who said, you know, the introversion is subjective and the most positive sense?
I think he said, yo, introversion is subjective, just like you said.
Our mental models are going to be very subjective because they're 100% our own and heavily influenced by our experiences.
I feel that's where I think we would differ from your thing, right? Because I feel when you're gathering the sensory, it's very much like you're gathering everybody's experiences and then you're building one intuitive model like that works on any sensory experiences, is my understanding. Correct me if I'm wrong. Joyce.
Oh.
Joyce.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I didn't know you were talking to me in terms of Yeah, no, I completely agree. Yeah. My models aren't built on my experience, is how I would explain it.
Something must feed you. Does SE feed you data points that you interpolate over? You must have some input.
It is, yeah, it is, but it doesn't feel it's dependent on what I experience personally. It is what Prem mentioned, the spectrum of experiences and then funneling them down. But I would never describe it as my experience.
The reason I'm highlighting
you're not
this now,
attached to it. Okay, that's
no. The reason I'm highlighting this now, Joyce, is to like then put this other point forward, saying why it is possible, why it is even possible for us to do any, and it's not possible for people like you who's gathering all the data. Because my sensory is so limited to my personal experience, I am then have this ability to have a lot of other intuitive models because all I'm applying those models for is my personal experiences.
I've heard of the SI and E axis being put by a YouTuber called Eric Wen. He talks about how like SI is like these Polaroid pictures of your experiences, and you're kind of like changing over the Polaroid pictures, and you're like, these two go together, or these two can go together, or that can go together with that. You can create like infinite possibilities from changing up the Polaroid pictures that you see in your lens. And so
how is NISE different then? Is NISE more in the moment? The SE, you cannot hold on to the picture. You just have the experience, and then you need to make an abstraction which lives in your NI, but you do not have the luxury of looking at a pile of pictures. So is that why you're not so aware of the sensory? Because you need sensory input to do NI afferences. But I think you do them as SE comes in and then SE vanishes. You cannot go back to the picture. You just remember the conclusion. Is that correct? Just to have a distinction between the two?
Yeah. You take away the conclusion with NISE, and then the experience then kind of fades away. So you know how like ideas sometimes fade away? Like when you generate a possibility, most of them vanish. Whereas with SE, it's like the sensory impression vanishes, but you keep the NI conclusion, and
that is so crazy because I hear that a lot. And maybe Jeffrey can input this later because I know he tracks the same thing as well. The fact that, I feel if you have like a graph, right? And I think what SEs are doing is they're like seeing all the data points, right? And they're like seeing that one line that is like best fit.
The trend.
Yeah,
the trend, right? However, I feel for SI is just like a lot of subjective data points. And then I'm just pushing like a interpretation based on the situation.
Yeah, totally.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. This is actually weird because I used the same analogy with a friend who was kind of unhappy, and I had her imagine that her various episodes of unhappiness were data points on a graph, and I tried to show like different interpretations you could draw. Like you could draw a smiley face with the same data points if you recontextualize it a little bit. Like your suffering doesn't have to be the only inference that you're making, but it seemed like she wanted to jump from the data to that. Another thing, and this is sort of related to Prem, your notion that we have fewer SI data points to draw upon, and then we can extrapolate with the NE. I mean, if you turn an ENTP inside out, then you have an ISFJ, and I do feel like there are certain things about
nice shot.
Just pull me inside out.
You destroy my soul. I'm no longer me.
But I do feel that there are ways in which I see a little baby ISFJ in certain behavioral traits that I have or certain dispositions I have. I am in some ways very comfort motivated, very drawn to the familiar, but it's only in a very like particular way. Like I like to drink the same sorts of things. Like I have a comfort zone, and from that comfort zone, I want the sensory stuff to be as minimal and as stabilized as possible so that the creativity can then take care of itself, and I don't have to exert any energy in maintaining all the other stuff. Like I would like some of the basics of my life to be just very standardized to liberate myself for the creativity.
Now, what do you exactly mean by ISFJ? Yeah, is that it?
ISFJ?
Right? Yeah. So what you said the baby ISFJ, what does that mean?
I just mean that I do see this very kind of infantile, unadapted, introverted sensing within myself. And, it's not as, and I can't build a life around it in the same way that an ISFJ could, but like I said, it's very infantile. It's more comfort zone driven.
Yeah, like I go to the same grocery store and I never even, you know what I mean? I hate the fact I hear my SE friends, they're like, oh yeah, I go to every grocery store, I go to every aisle, check all the rates, then I compare them and I see the best place to buy tomatoes. I'm like, I can't. I can't, man. I just want to go to like one place.
Yeah, that's right.
I trust this place that it'll give me like a decent deal and not rip me off, and I'm fine with that. You know what I mean? I don't want to like explore. When I shop, I don't even like look at anything around. I just look at the things I want to buy. Okay, here's a tomato. Where's an apple? Then I look at the apple. I don't like scan anything.
So you're not a fan of extreme couponing? It's
No, man. They have like these huge books. I'm like, dude, I'm not willing to like go to this catalog.
Yes.
Yeah.
The only interesting thing is, how could you do it that you walk away? It's the concept of walking away with more than you came with. But the detailed is, I don't care if I have that much laundry detergent in my basement.
What's funny? I've been going to the same grocery store for like a year now, and I still don't know where everything is. And every time I just go there, I just ask an employee, I'm actually looking for this. Can you please help me like find it? Oh, you go here. Where exactly? Oh, look here, right? Okay, thanks. Then I go there. There'll be like another employee there. Okay, I'm actually looking for this thing next. Can you like tell me where to find? So I just like go like that.
Yeah.
Just saves the mental work for me to like gather the sensory, But, yeah.
Man, I used to work third shift in retail at a Walgreens overnight, and there would be people who would come in at 3 a.m. That's usually when the extreme coupon people would come in, and so that's when I finally understood like the concept of murderous rage, because I would have to stand there 4 hours on end, going through each one, scanning it, making sure that it's valid.
I want this one.
I'm not familiar with this coupon thing. What is it exactly? So where do you even find this? And how much do you save?
It's like when people save an outrageous amount of coupons, all for like a certain type of shopping spree, and you have to scan like hundreds and hundreds of coupons to give all of their deals to them. Yeah.
There's a TV show about this, and basically it is about optimizing your strategy. There are actually ways, if you look at every magazine and everywhere, you can basically walk into a store and not pay anything, but walk away with $400 worth of stuff, because you layer one deal on another. And for me, the joy would be to figure out how that works. But then I'm happy. I don't need to do it.
Yeah.
But somebody is like, I got it now. I got 50 years worth of toothpaste.
I would love if someone did that for me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I was just thinking you could teach a course on it. Like, now that you have the knowledge, you can teach the course.
No.
The course will be called How to Put Jeffrey in a Murderous Rage.
I mean, it's worthwhile. It's just it would be tedious to me, right? Once I figured it out, typical ENTP thing.
Look,
I don't want to do it.
If Jeffrey put a gun in my head and said, you have to figure this out, the way I would go about it is I would actually talk to people, make really good friends with the store people, and have them figure it out for me. So I heard there's this coupon thing, right? What is that exactly? And they like fish in for information, and that's the possible way I would do it. I wouldn't go to the grunt work of actually gathering the sense.
I think Jeffrey's triggered now after that.
He's like, damn, Walmart.
How do I leave the conversation?
You've got to figure those people came in at 3 a.m. because they'd had so many death threats when they used to do it during daylight hours from other customers.
Other customers I could see.
Oh,
yes,
that's why they came at 3 a.m. I'm like, why did they come midnight?
That blocked the line.
That way it's just Jeffrey they're annoying.
I have to shoulder all of that suffering that would be distributed otherwise. Yeah,
you can turn it into a happy face.
I love it.
Yeah. What do you guys think about conspiracy theories?
I love them.
I think it's all a big. Those conspiracy theories are just a plot.
Yeah, they're all just a plot. There's people.
The meta conspiracy theory. There's the meta conspiracy.
What about like, I don't know, aliens and stuff?
Oh yeah, honestly, like I remember I used to be like super into those, like especially through middle school, high school. But then it's like I keep hearing the same thing over and over, so I'm just like, this is getting boring, which has made me like turn like a little bit ISTP, like, okay, thanks, aliens, yeah, UFOs, ancient Egypt, I don't know, mystical powers or whatever, green emerald tablets. I keep hearing about these green emerald tablets that nobody sees. I'm just like, okay, cool.
But the necklaces are okay, right?
Yes,
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
Joyce is like, what is going on?
Yeah, but it's like, I don't know, they sort of I like keeping a bit of a flight of fancy, but like for the most part, I feel most conspiracy theories are just like, aren't worth it, but then there's some. There are some that are worth the deep dive. But
But
like, I feel like even the term of conspiracy theory helps those those few that are worth the deep dive hide in the shroud of like, oh, it's just a conspiracy theory, bro. Look into it though. You can't just say it's just a conspiracy theory. It's like you gotta like know what you're talking. Like I don't like people just like saying things as if they're facts, but like have nothing to back back it with. And so like if there's like, let's say someone like poses a conspiracy theory about X, I was like, well, let's just stick into it. Let's just stick into it. Particularly like if it sounds feasible, if it sounds like it would be like a motive, like economically or like socially. It's like, yeah, like let's just see what's the possibility of this actually being utilized in society, and why would it be useful for, like, let's say the powers that be, the people, the nebulous day organization, like, yeah, they're doing it. It's like, but yeah, no, I do enjoy them sometimes, and like do actually like sometimes I get like into this like any mode of like, this is real. Like, yeah, like, what if this is true? I'm just like, I gotta start prepping ASAP. And, but it lasts for like 3 days at most or whatever.
Yeah. The reason I bring up conspiracy theories is because what I really wanted to talk about, I wanted to highlight this fact where I feel we can entertain certain possibilities without actually believing it. And I feel that is very unique. And I feel not many people do that. Even if Joyce tomorrow you come and say, you know what, I've been abducted by aliens last night. They did this thing to me and here I am, nothing. I would be able to like entertain the possibility and assume that it happened, but also have an open mind that it didn't happen. Yes. I could entertain both the facets at the same time.
I was in the Skeptical Society for a while.
What does that mean?
So there's an organization called the Skeptic Society, and they
are they skeptical about being skeptical?
They go around debunking conspiracy theories and hauntings, and yeah. So I was pretty deep into that for a long time. So I'm not sure I can go. I don't know how much. I do have pet theories that I know have no basis. I can't back them up at all, but I'll keep them back here. Like, nah, yeah, that fits my theory. That's right. I'm not gonna tell anybody because I sound crazy.
I think for myself, I'm obviously drawn to the idea that there's some hidden information out there that could radically change my life if I just happen to stumble upon it. But I think one benefit of growing up in the internet age is that I've seen myself go through enough cycles of like, this is the theory that I'm so invested in. Hang on, it's just bullshit. This is the one. Like, now that I've done that enough times, I'm a little bit more, I'm able to step outside of myself and not take it as seriously.
But I think that really highlights probably an ENTP trait, which is the willingness to adjust your model and to more believe the total opposite, as long as somebody sold you on the idea and it satisfies your TI, so to speak. So they talk about debating. Actually, I don't know if you guys, I was not in debating clubs. I don't like to argue for the sake of arguing, although sometimes it's too...
I don't agree, Boris. Wow. I'm joking.
Yeah, then puck you. Sorry, Korean swear words. Shouldn't say that. Puck is a Korean swear word.
Oh, really? I thought. Oh, okay.
I thought it was a Canadian thing.
Yeah.
Good one. No, well, actually, this is not a racist statement. It's just I have Korean friends and they have problems with F and P, and one used to say puck you, Boris. I'm like, I'm not Canadian. What are you talking about?
Yeah. What do you think, Joyce? How do you view? Have you ever like convinced ENTP otherwise? You know what I mean? So has someone come with you like with a model, and then you went, oh no, this is how it works. And you went, oh, and the guy went, oh wow, this is how it works. Okay, thank you. And just went away. You know what I mean? Did you have moments like that?
She has too much FE. She says, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, I have moments where I look more agreeable than maybe I might be feeling inside. So I'm good at making people feel like I'm on their side when I might actually not share the same opinion.
But we see it. I see it. So be careful.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
I do notice with ENTPs, there is this openness where, you know, if new information comes in as you're gathering things, that you can change your mind more than INTPs, at least. That's a big differentiator, I think.
Oh, my mental model has to match the universe, the
Oh,
external universe.
Oh.
Yeah, it's not a valid model if it doesn't match experience. Yeah, I can't just say, oh, this is a great model, I'm going to hold on to it. And if something comes in and it's real, then I've either got to dismiss it or tear down my model and build it up again.
And to use a model to describe the model, I think an INTP builds this huge structure. I think of cubes and nodes connecting each other, and they have this mega, say, here, this is my world. Whereas ENTP is like, I have a little blob here, make it a cube, throw it over there, and they sort of loosely float around like ice in the water. They might connect, but we're not that invested. Whereas if you tell an INTP, no, this is wrong, it's like, oh my God, my world crumbles. For me, it's one of those little ice cubes might need to be adjusted. Oh, I'll chuck it. I'll make another one, right? That's a big distinction between INTPs and ENTPs, I think.
Yeah, I actually grew up with like an INTP brother, and like I know some other INTPs that I actually like do enjoy talking to. But like I've heard statements from INTPs like, that which I see is that which exists. I'm just like, bro, like basically,
what are you on right now?
Yeah, it's like I couldn't even imagine having that much like, you know, intellectual arrogance of just like, no, what I see is what exists. Like I make things appear into existence by observation, so that which I see is that which exists. And I'm just like, you know, it's like you can't even like, you know, you just kind of like poke at the person like, ooh, what is this, man? What is like, yeah, but yeah, no, it's like I feel like it's very easy just like an ENTP to just like, you know, keep your models like somewhat flexible. I do have like I do have like 3 core things in my TI though that I always look for. It's always like a heuristic, a logic, or a syllogisms for a conjecture. But like if I don't get those, then I'm kind of a little bit frustrated when people just like say things. Like I almost think like either they're like sometimes I just hear people like when they say things, it's just like, you know, as okay, that's a claim. That's a claim. Thanks. I don't know what to do with that.
No, it's the truth.
Or it's just like, you know, noise. I'm just like, okay, because like I would be more I would be more willing to entertain it like when I was younger, like, you know, just go entertain this possibility. But like as I've gotten older, it's just like there's been this like filter of like, okay, let me know how to spend my time and like not like, you know, waste my mental resources. So like if I don't hear anything that backs up a claim, then I'm just like, I'll just nod. I'll FE nod like, oh, be like, okay, or I'll be like, okay, or I'll like if it's something important, I'll just be like, you know, could you just like back that up or something like that, or are you just gonna say stuff? But I'll get like a little bit mad. Like, you're just gonna say stuff. Like, you're just gonna keep doing this.
So what do you mean by that?
Yeah, actually, I could do a tangent here, Scott. You seem to be very happily married to an INFP. And for me, they're kind of fascinating because we connect on NE, but I think FI and TI, you have to be quite a wizard or very, very mature to make the two get along because they can clash.
Oh yeah,
at a moment's notice.
Oh no, yeah, it's
I would disagree.
Myers-Briggs has probably saved my marriage.
No,
and that we have because we know what they are. We know what the letters are. IE took some work. Okay, it's still
extroverted.
Yeah, still takes work, but we actually have some signals that like you know, if I'm gonna, my wife, when she asks for advice, she will let me know what kind of advice she wants. She has what she calls a refrigerator moment. She used to do website design, and I'd look at these things. I'm like, you know, I can string HTML together all day long, but it never comes out looking like that. So mine's all like boxes, and hers is like flowing. I'm like, it's just amazing. But when she say she's done with a project, and she'll say refrigerator time, and I'll know I'm supposed to point out the things that are great, and not offer constructive criticism. There are other times when she really wants my help, and then I know I can, you know, with skill, you know, kind of say, well, you know, you can't really do that. You're gonna have to do it this way. Just believe me. So those are the kinds of, and they're very conscious, and they're very we set them up. We agreed with them. I think I told Joyce this story that at some point my wife was trying to be more extroverted, and bringing up things to discuss before she'd really worked through them. I was so used to her having worked through things that when she would say something, that's pretty much her thought on the subject, and it was something that needed to be dealt with, or adapted to, or negotiate. And when she first started doing that, she was saying all sorts of things, and I thought, oh, that's what she wants to do. And it wasn't. She was just putting it out there, trying to be nice to her extroverted spouse. Didn't see it coming. So now we have I'm just saying this. I haven't thought this out. This is not. And okay, let's talk about it. So it's
that's nice.
Myers-Briggs has really helped us a great deal. Just and for me, it's what I try and tell people is that just the idea that other people are thinking differently from you. If you get that, if you couldn't tell an SJ from an NF, that's fine. But if you're thinking, hey, that person isn't seeing things exactly the way I am, or approaching things, has the same motivators that I do, then you're going to start listening.
Right.
So,
Yeah. I would like to take a moment here and highlight what you just said, Scott, because I think is so important. And I feel it naturally just makes sense to us early on that, oh, yeah, this guy thinks differently. And even the thing is, if you noticed the way you are using MBTI, even right now, eating with a wife, it's so situational. You're not looking at your wife like, oh, it's an ISTJ, she's doing ISTJ, blah, 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 blah. In that situation, you had a problem and you're like, how can I solve this problem? Let me look at this MBTI. Use the MBTI, oh, I see this is a problem. And then you stopped using it, and then you just normal mode, right? I feel that is so NE, but when you actually talk to NI users, it's also real, and everything has to match. You know what I mean? So if there's an INFJ, they always need to act like INFJ based on their personal pattern of how INFJs are. If they somehow stopped acting like INFJs, is like, oh my god.
She's sitting right there.
Yeah, I was about to say.
Yeah.
You said always, and there's an INFJ in the room. We should leave her the floor.
No. This is my interpretation. That's what I was leading up to. This is
it's a question that she would like to answer, or we would like to know.
Is this true? This is what my understanding is from what I spoke to. It's all so real. But is that true though?
Well, okay, so where I find friction with me and extroverted intuition users is, okay, I'll say a pattern, and I'm I observe this is my conclusion here. They'll like to challenge it just because they want to understand it and explore it more. So they're like, oh, yeah, okay, I could see a hole here or an exception here, or where it doesn't make sense here. And then I go huh, and I'll go for a couple of weeks and I'll think about it, and I'm like, that might be true. And then I'll come back and I'll say, all right, so I've considered what you said very thoroughly, because it's very it means a lot to me to get it right. And so they're like, oh, I just I farted out that conjecture to challenge your idea. I didn't actually mean that I thought it. Yeah. It's so they can be very nonchalant and say something that it will shake the core of my reality, and I'm like, what? I have to rethink everything. And then they're like, oh no,
we didn't even know. We were just doing stuff.
I think it's very important for us to be aware of things like that, because we could just be pushing out possibilities like this. So tomorrow, I'm like, yeah, this could be possible, this could be possible. But for you, it's a very big deal, right? But for me, it's very hard. I can conceptually empathize it now after MBTI. However, it's not something that is immediately obvious,
Yeah. Well, to NI, it doesn't feel like you're entertaining possibilities. I assume everyone else is using NI default, unless I remember that not everyone thinks like me. So I assume that when someone is presenting me a possibility, it might be actually something that, oh, this is how they see the world. I'm like, oh, right, this is their reality framework. And then I find out it was just a possibility. And I was like, oh, that is so much less serious than how I weigh things in my mind.
Which speaks to Scott's point that it's really helpful just to have the notion in your head, hey, there are these other flavors out there, right. NI versus NE. It just, I understand you better, Joyce, and you understand us better, because they come from a different perspective. So that's where for me, the main value is of MBTI, not to label somebody, just to open my mind to, there's these different equally valid ways of seeing the world. And you have sort of little pre-canned boxes. I might say Joyce might be an INFJ, so I may more likely trigger this or that. That's the main value for MBTI for me.
That's amazing.
Yeah, that's the same for me as well. But that's something I don't feel everybody, even in watching this video, would really use it that way. They probably use it to like label someone or even like categorize people. Or
I worry my son. He's an INTJ. I tell my kids, the ESTJ daughter, an INTJ son. I say, use your powers for good. Don't use Myers-Briggs because kid growing up surrounded by Myers-Briggs. Don't use it to try and control people. Don't use it to try and get a girlfriend or something. Just use it in a very humanistic point of view.
But he's an INTJ.
I know he's
got a plot.
19, and that's all it's about right now. The hair, the car, everything. Yeah.
That's hilarious. Yeah.
I'm glad I was never 19.
I don't know, guys. I'm actually charging people $1,000 an hour to tell you how to tap into your personality and exploit the people around you. So.
Oh, is that what the...
And $1,000 I do that too. There's a point where I changed my mind.
And he's writing the book about it too.
I see what you're doing, Jeff. Yeah. No, but I really want to understand this a bit further, because I think the value in MBTI is not actually the MBTI, but rather what Scott mentioned is that even realizing that people think literally differently. They literally have literally process information differently. I feel just becoming aware of that now gives you a possibility where you can communicate or even understand another person on a personal level and see how they actually, you know what I mean?
It would be so hard to actually think like someone who doesn't think like you, because they don't think like you. But the motivations, and I don't know if it was who is it that has those essential motivators and all that?
Linda Behrens.
Yeah, Linda Behrens. The motivations of people. I work with an ESTJ, and I kind of get her motivations, so I can put up with some of her shenanigans. The rest of the people I work with, she drives them batty. I'm like, yeah, I see what she's doing there.
It's weird. Most people don't like to be micromanaged by the sound of
it. Surprise.
Who knew? That's right.
Yeah.
But knowing
Joyce, you were about to say something and then we interrupted you. I noticed that. It's just like...
Yeah, the analogy I like to use for type is that type is like a needle. You can either use a needle to inject life-saving fluid into someone, or you can use a needle to euthanize someone. And so ultimately, it's
sure, let's go.
That's pretty dark, Joyce.
Yeah, that's right.
What
Boris has the group for
you. You know what's funny? I was thinking she was talking about sewing. I'm like, oh, you can I can make life with stitching. I'm like, okay, you can make life, or you can kill someone on a cut.
Yeah.
Sure, yeah, why not?
Oh yeah, not that kind of needle, but yeah. So my point with that is that it's up to you how you use it and what you choose to deliver with that needle. And so something about type that was very revolutionary for me was so a lot of people have the assumption in their mind that if you're not like them, that there's something wrong with you and deficient in you. They think that, if you don't have that brain circuitry that does things as well as I do things in this specific area, then you just don't use your brain. But the reality is you're probably utilizing your brain in a different way. So by using less of this part of your brain, you're actually, allocating more energy to another part of your brain.
Or maybe the opposite. You're not just using that little piece, you're using it all, but that's hard to see to the guy or girl that uses only that little piece. I'm sorry.
Absolutely. Yeah. So it makes you less quick to judge people, to know about typology if you choose to use it that way.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
I just wanted to say, I feel like this is so easily overlooked, but it's been in typology since the beginning. If you read Jung talking about the book Psychological Types, one thing that he often says is the theme that people overlook is that it's intended to address the problem of one-sidedness. Like what happens when everyone is so like one-sided or all in on their particular way of viewing the world. And then intrinsically, as a result of that, they kind of other people who are using alternative ways of seeing the world.
Yeah, it's a tool that is used to resolve the lack of understanding within each perspective. But it's just a tool, right? But I think believing that the way the tool is the reality, I feel that's where the flaw is. That's where I have a problem with. and a person says, "Oh, these things exist, guys. Here's like an ENTP, then a INFJ, and then this ENTP is like a cool type. INFJ is like the rare, smarter type, and this is what they do." I'm like, bro, what's going on?
Yeah, and then you have people building those hierarchy charts of like these are the
S tiers,
and the S tiers, and these are
most
the F
charismatic
tiers.
ENTP. I'm like, yes.
Yeah.
Means nothing.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. So I get nervous around cool people, so bear in mind.
A bunch of
my
ESTPs
God.
today.
Cool people.
Brings the nerdiest guys talking about existential. So cool.
She has FE. She wants to make us feel good.
Yeah.
It's working, yeah.
Yeah, and so I'm wondering about everyone's experience with extroverted intuition, NE. How is it like to be you using NE? You can use examples, stories, or just illustrate it however you want.
I did think about this just a little bit, and it's almost like the water I swim in, NE. It is so ever present that I don't even really notice it's going on until I start talking to someone who's not NE, and then the mismatch is, and like I'm already moving on, and they're still back here kind of weighing two factors that I've already kind of gone through, and I moved on. Being more MBTI aware, I can kind of exploit that and kind of use it in a positive way with other people who I kind of have an idea of their type. But yeah, that's I don't really notice it so much unless it becomes a problem, either in communicating with another person, or I get so NE that I start some things in my kitchen start ending up in unusual drawers. Like, what's that doing there? That's right.
From all the charcoal.
Yeah, that's right. It's like, oh boy, Scott, you are spinning out of control. You need to just take a deep breath. Going too hard. Yeah.
Yeah. Your catchphrase is something along the lines of like, you've already considered.
Yeah, I've already considered and rejected 4 possibilities while you're still thinking of the first possibility.
Yeah.
I've noticed that experience with like INTJs. Like, I actually like talking to INTJs a lot, and I've actually like those are like one of the few people that I can just like sit down with and just like have an immediate conversation. Like, you feel like there's a compatible sort of like framework that we're using. But I've noticed that like so sometimes I have this like weekly philosophy talk with a Discord group, and sometimes when like it's like me, ENTP and an INTP, like we're talking about a subject, like we can like we're using these analogies that we just like are throwing around, but we sort of like understand our language. And then like the INTJ is like, hey, stop, can we like dig into like what you just said over there a little bit more? And like they want to stick on this like point here because it feels like, I guess they want to like just flesh out this idea rather than it just being thrown around. While like me and the INTP seem to like, okay, we just get it. But it's more of like we're getting it, we're using it for like the sake of like, it's almost like we can make like automatic sort of definitions of things, and then we sort of like understand what we're generally saying about this sort of like, let's say, construct or this sort of idea, and we're not like super into, let's say, fleshing out all the implications, or like we're or like it's like we're fairly confident in like what the implications are, at least for the like the scope of the topic. But then like the INTJ is like, okay, no, like let's dig into this, let's flesh this out, see if it actually means what you think it means. Like questions like that, they're a little bit more like, okay, let me like just probe into this one concept first, and then we'll skip to the other one. So just jumping around from different concept to concept, which is sort of like what he kind of gets annoyed with. And yeah, even like gosh, with NE in general, it just feels like you can go on so many tangents. Like even like when I'm not noticing like my speech pattern is like when I actually like start jumping into NE like wildly. It's just like just branching, a lot of branching in communication, or it's easy to go into like a tangent that's sort of related to the main line, but then it starts just going off, like, and it doesn't like stop as much or whatever. And it sort of actually reminds me of what I like. There's something that annoys me about like my ESTJ mom is that like she'll start us like just to get to like one particular like idea. Here comes a whole story. Here comes a whole social story with like all these particulars. I'm just like, I don't really care. But like then I notice like, wait, I do the same thing, but with like in any sort of way with this inferior SI of like, oh, like here's an idea, yeah, but oh yeah, well, what about this and this and then all this and this and all, and they might be like they're more like separately branching off topics that are still related in some way to like let's say a concept, but like they don't really like dovetail back until like someone reminds me. And like I frequently have to find myself asking like, oh wait, what do we start talking about again? I frequently actually have to like do that, and like I get some like NI person or an SI person like sort of like, oh yeah, we're talking about this. I was like, oh yes, and it relates. And like that's basically what I end up doing.
That's funny. What about you?
I usually remember what the original was, but I have to like jerk back. Yeah, back to the topic we were talking about. That diversion never happened.
I think
it's not the digression you were looking for.
That's I think we get so diverted. I think the other person has to pull. I'm like, why are we talking about this again?
Because we can.
or they can get annoyed. Like,
yes,
why I didn't want to talk about that. So like, oh, sorry.
How about that 8 o'clock report tomorrow morning?
Like, what? 8 o'clock?
Oh, there is one. I better get right on.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is there a schedule? What?
No, I mean, being the primary function, it makes sense that my identity is largely tied up in it. It's sort of all I associate with being myself, like nimble, flexible, adaptive, exploratory. It defines a lot of what I feel is me, right? I mean, and I trust TI to rein it in, because otherwise, if you only had an E, you'd be in the corner seizing and twitching. But it gives me joy, just exploring possibilities. They just flow at you, and it's almost like I'm an observer of what's going on in my mind, but it's like seeing a movie, but it's everything at once. And also, if it interacts with FE, it really gives you I think it enables you to really engage people, because you have hints, hunches of what are they about, what do they want, and you can really connect with them. So NE and FE together are like social lubricant, right?
Yes.
I mean,
one thing I would like to say, which I think Jeffrey made in like a video about ENTP or something. I think what I want to highlight here is that I like to see many different possible interpretation of the same thing. That's what I actually want. I don't want an influx of many different things, What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to see the same situation, the same moment, and I'm trying to interpret it in like multiple ways. And when I see like another new interpretation that this could even be interpreted like this, damn, that's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, the idea that when you say that, I think of this like notion of circumambulation, where you're like walking around something from so many different vantage points to develop a really comprehensive, maybe NETI fusion theory about that thing. So that's where it's helpful to think about a different framework, a different angle on this particular topic. And then for me personally, I feel like I take something out of all of those frameworks and then try to on the conveyor belt, I move it along to the TI, and I try to make something that's a little more of a unique standpoint out of these different perspectives.
Man, that's insane that we can do that. For me, NE is like a tool to like build a TI. And here's what I consume a lot of things, right? And I can consume a lot of things with a lot of inflow of information I can like consume. So what I do with that thing is I read a lot of people like you, who have created like one concept in life, and they have written book about it, this, and all this. But there are like hundreds of people who did that, right? Now I read hundreds of people like that. I consume hundreds of concepts, and you like start seeing the same recurring concepts again and again and again and again. And then you go, you know what? A random psychologist cannot come up with the same concept that like a bagpipe guy came up with, but it's the same concept. There must be some truth to this. You know what I mean? And that's where my inquiry starts. So that's how I'm like cross-verifying if what I'm even consuming is real or not. So I don't stack. I'm just like, I'm narrowing the genre. I'm taking like one genre, gathering as much interpretation I can, and you like see some common patterns that people have commonly came up with. I'll see it recurring, and be like, there should be some truth in this. That's my thesis.
Very, very interesting. Yeah, there's a lot of branching out in NE and the tangents, collecting the spectrum of possibilities there. Very, very cool. And so introverted thinking, how do you all experience introverted thinking?
It's the savior that NE needs, right? It's the, out of all the functions, the ones I trust most. I mean, I have 2 judgment functions. FE allows me to connect with people. But at the end of the day, TI is what I trust, right? Consistency is, unlike FI, I think it's a little more complicated. That's why I might have some tension with FI high users. I trust TI.
Damn, you hate
decisions.
FI, huh?
No, I don't hate it. It's just it doesn't follow it doesn't have the it doesn't have the need to be consistent in a way that I would consider consistent, right?
But it's perfectly consistent
in
itself, an FI way. Yeah, that's right.
In a non-repeatable way that's very individual. Right. But no, I think TI is almost borderline neutral, right? I mean, you might agree. Two strong TI users are probably, they will argue about initial assumptions, but unless they're plain nuts, maybe peanuts or pecans, I don't know, they will agree in the end. It's because the rules of inference are probably a little more shareable compared to FI, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's what keeps me sane. It's what I trust most when I make tough decisions. While I still consider FE, because FE brings in other considerations of values of sorts. I don't really have FI, but to me, it's my rock, right?
Yeah, for me, I definitely relate to that as far as the notion of the TI keeping you sane. And I feel that with my intuition, it's almost like I'm getting like dunked into the ancient Greek underworld, and I'm, being subjected to all of these mythological ideas and strange patterns, and you have to come out of that, and you have to be able to translate that in some way that is actually rationally digestible for the rest of the world. And then obviously the FE as well can help you build rapport so that people don't necessarily think that you're this unhinged person, but the TI is the thing that shapes and articulates a lot of the intuition.
Yeah. It is actually scary how when people see how I think, it's so like, oh, because of this, I'm doing this, and because of that, I'm doing that. It's so like calculated. It like creeps people out. It's like, damn, this is like too calculated. You know what I mean?
I don't share that much. But yeah, it's a little scary how logical you can find yourself being. Like,
yeah.
And that need to be logical and everything having to fit, and then the extroversion kind of forces you to deal with the outside world, which can be a real drag when you're trying to be logically consistent, because it's not always logically consistent. Our perception of it isn't provide for logical consistency. But yeah, that's and that when Boris was talking about that detachment, I think I experienced that with my TI, which is step back, logically, neutrally, how should this be done? As a parent, gets a little weird. I try not to be that guy, that dad, but you are thinking, what would be fair here? Or is fairness even called for here? Is it logical that this would be fair?
Yeah. I feel one thing that I really like about, I think all TI users share is that it's at least immune to like emotional turbulence. Like if you're like stroke, if you're like have a lot of emotions, hardship, you can still think rationally and like say, okay, because of this, I'm supposed to do this. At least you know what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
Whether you do that or not.
Yeah, exactly.
That's where FE comes in. That's right.
Yeah.
You have some skill.
Yeah.
Yeah. How about you, Hevander?
Yeah, I feel like gosh, sometimes I rely on TI a little too much. Well, mostly because it does keep my life together at the moment. But it's like sometimes I find myself like getting into ruts in thinking, as in like I want to verify my mental model more than I want to, let's say, get something done. Which I don't. It's not a pragmatic thing, and that's the issue. It's like sometimes like I notice that like not because of like, let's say, the TI assumptions in, let's say, producing the model wrong, but sort of like the, let's say, maybe the level, like the experience of my execution. Maybe it's like an SI thing of just like, being a little bit lazy or something like that. But like sometimes I just notice that I remember my first work experience in like a corporate job. I was making some models, and like I was basically for like time series prediction, and I sort of like hypothesized that like, hey, we could kind of use like entropy metrics for like these sort of like recurrent patterns in these time series, and my approach was basically making up like a whole thesis and like this whole like conception of how this would work by using entropy metrics. And then later on, I actually started implementing stuff. But like I spent a lot of time just developing, let's say, my mental model first and not integrating things, which isn't like a very pragmatic use of time when it comes to, let's say, if you're in the workspace. And that job actually sort of like made me realize that like I spent a lot of time in, let's say, developing this mental model and also wanting to like do it a certain fixed way. Sometimes I become very fixed and like, okay, no, I have to do this next and everything like that because of like what my model tells me. Or I have to make sure that like I get this amount of performance because based on these metrics, I should get about this amount of performance and everything like that. So it's a lot of like wanting to like validate certain assumptions or certain like or just like the logic of let's say of an idea. Which, not to say that like it doesn't bear out, but it's more so that like I get too fixated on that versus like what's out around in my environment and like how I should be addressing things in my environment. But yeah, for me it's like I feel it's mostly been very dependable, and I really appreciate that about just like TI. I mean, growing up in INTP, it's like I did have to use it fairly often, and I just sort of like learned that like, okay, as long as I like look at things with at least these three key things in mind of having some sort of heuristic, a logic, or a conjecture through syllogism and what I hear or what I'm looking at, or like if someone gives me information, then I can sort of like grip with an idea. I can sort of like grab and like sort of like understand an idea as long as I get these three concepts from the idea or from what someone's telling me or the information. But yeah, that's sort of like my experience with like a TI, if that made any sense.
Interesting. Yeah. All right. So that brings us to extroverted feeling, FE. And so FE oftentimes has the stereotype of people pleasing. And I think some ENTPs might struggle with this depending on the ENTP. So I don't know. I was just trying to give ideas. So yeah.
Who wants to jump in on this one? This
Go
FE.
for it.
Oh,
yeah,
goodness.
You had a reaction, right?
You might as well put them together. They're so close together.
Oh yeah, I know, right?
Might as well give us the...
Yeah, but like sometimes I don't like FE just because like I see that like it sort of like starts disturbing my TI. I'm just like, oh, what's going on here? And particularly, I remember before the age of 19, like I wasn't the best emotionally attuned person, especially like until I started getting like a lot of like female friends and things like that. But like
trial and error. Oops.
Yeah, like a lot of trial and error. But I mean, I know that like I had this sort of a FE inclination when I was a kid. Let's say when something like traumatic would happen to something else. When something traumatic would happen to someone else, I'd immediately start like feeling it and like be like sad and everything like that, or like like really like crying, especially if it was someone close. It's like mourning happens just like automatically. But then I remember having this very like TI moment of like saying like, wait, what am I doing this for? This is irrational. It's like this mourning for other people doesn't do anything for them. It's like it's not solving their issue. And so I cut it off for a long time until like my teens and everything like that, right? And it was strange. The first moment I like after like this long period I started like experiencing FE heavily was like girlfriend issues. But no, but yeah, it's like this sort of, it was almost like an impulse, like something bad happened to like this person that I care about and something that I can't fix. And I remember like it just hit me one time at night and I just started like sweating a lot. And I started just feeling like pins and needles in my back. And I'm just like, what is this? And it's like, it's not even things I could define because I didn't have the language to, or like emotional experience to define what's going on. Why do I feel this way? So yeah, it was mostly like, not a great experience. It was like to vicariously feel someone's pain. Sure, it's like maybe you can put yourself more in their shoes, but at that time it's just like, I don't know why I'm feeling this for. It's like, or like this feeling that I had, like I was trying to fight something but that thing was like, death, and you can't really fight it. So you just start getting these like sort of like sweats and like feeling this like hot sensation all over me. It's like that was just the worst I felt FE before. But after that, sort of like made me more inclined to like find some language for this, or find some language for this sort of like this phenomenon that I was feeling, that was like intense feeling and everything like that. And eventually it made me like especially with like having these other female friends, it made me more attuned to, let's say, use of language, being the notion of being tactful in language, so that people aren't disturbed by like the people aren't disturbed by your delivery, and they can more readily absorb your concepts or like what you're saying. So that's sort of like when I started developing this notion, and like once I started like understanding, oh, there's a word called tactfulness, and being emotionally cognizant of what people say, of like what you say that like might like agitate people. And I was like, oh my gosh, I feel like I'm a genius now. I can like sort of like maneuver through all these different like social settings by just being like more a little bit more smooth with my delivery, a little bit like less sharp, less pointed, and like less. I remember since I was a kid, I was very probing with TI. I was like, hey, what about this? What about this? And which was like, annoying for people. And like, now it's more so I sort of had this sort of like way of sort of addressing the topic almost ambiently, or making a person feel safe first before addressing a certain topic. And that was like a very like, revolutionary like sort of idea for me. So yeah, that's sort of my experience with like a FE. It still has some issues though. Still like, sometimes I still feel things that I don't want to feel. I'm just like, geez, let me know.
Yeah, I think I can chime in because I actually have to jump out after this anyway. So I'll say my piece and then say goodbye. But as far as
you're skipping SI. Oh, that was fast.
I'm gonna jump in now.
Kidding. Yeah.
Well, he'll be coming back. He's still in the panel, so right.
Yeah,
Joyce, did you just censor him?
Maybe his device ran out of battery. I'm thinking that might be.
Yeah.
But he is still there, right? I mean, he would have been dropped completely out of the pool. He might be.
Oh, he sent me a message. My computer literally died the moment I started talking.
Do we want to go back to conspiracy theories now?
No.
That's right.
How much did you pay him? And you didn't pay him enough. And I think I should get paid too. Oh, nice.
That's the problem.
She only paid him enough to get there.
So, okay, I guess that's.
Please make another payment. Put
That's
another token in.
This could go in the bloopers part of the video, who knows. But I would like to chime in with the tactfulness thing, where because the TI is so immovable, right? You're not willing to compromise with that TI. The question now is, how can I deliver this in a way that the other person will at least consider it? You know what I mean? Because people sometimes like throw a lot of like dumb ideas at you. I'm not, but this could be true. Like how you feel with like any users, like but this could happen, but this could happen. But Bob from the Home Depot said this, but that's not how pipes work, Like where do you even start, right? So the question is, how do you deliver the information in a more tactful way, where it considers that feeling and it like opens a window of opportunity for you to then say your T. You can't just blindly say, I think you're wrong, and here's why, and then like bounce,
You can, but you don't get good results.
Yeah.
That's my INTJ son, who's still developing his skills. He'll say that is objectively false.
Objectively.
I don't think that's what that means for starters. But you're not going to get anywhere here if you go around
that
attitude.
Like that.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah. And there's a drive for effectiveness. So FE, like you said, sets things up so that you can get your foot. Maybe we just want to look smart. I'm aware of that. But yeah, you want to communicate. Your TI FE helps you kind of get your point across, like you said. It's, I don't even think it's tact. I think it's I usually the word is harmony. I don't want because you don't want to create drama because that's
unnecessary
so taxing
drama
and unproductive and I don't want people being mad at me.
You know what is a beautiful what is a beautiful example of this? It would be dancing, salsa. I think that captures Effie beautifully because there's an ebb and flow to dancing, right? That is all necessary. There is no. It's like you need to play the dance. That's what it feels like for me. Okay, I'm dancing with you. I can't just crescendo away. You know what I mean? Say and like bang and there's like a flow. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's like
And
a
an
flow to
exchange,
how there's an exchange. There's like a flow how things flow, and I feel FE gives you that opportunity to like create that flow.
Yeah,
That's
I
how
think
see it.
at the root of FE is an innate ability to have a mental model or a true experience of another person's emotional life in their frame of reference. I think that's the root of anything FE. And that can then have different manifestations. One is you can be vulnerable to, if that person's experience imposes itself on you, you could be vulnerable to trying to please that person to make their life better so that you don't have to suffer their misery. This could be where you could become a bit of a sucker that gets run over or does more than they should do. Another flip side is you could also then, having that knowledge or that ability that's fairly accurate in modeling the other person, you can be, let's say, persuasive. I don't want to be manipulative, but it can help you to achieve an effect in another person. And in its most extreme, you could be a Machiavellian manipulator, and the both come from the same root, right? And what I like is, and Joyce may agree, I think if the functions are in the middle, second and third, they're not far from each other, so they can almost form this complex where they inform each other and actually make you fairly skilled at navigating social context, picking up on who is stuck where, having empathy with somebody that is being left out or bullied. It's just something that together they're a nice package, which might be harder for somebody that let's say an INTP where they're far away from each other, right? So it can make you a manipulator, it can make you a sucker, but the root cause is I know how you feel. Now, how do I act on that? Do I become a victim of it, or do I persuade you to something? So sorry, that was my long spiel.
Well, just branching like very briefly off of what Boris mentioned, I noticed that like this sort of like FE and E sort of like interactions in me sometimes, which like sometimes at least are very like being very like socially lubricating, or like actually being able to like grab a friend who's like a little bit more shy and then just like interject both of ourselves into like this random group of people and be like, hey, how you guys doing, and everything like that. And like, hey, this is my friend here. We just came here recently. Like, being very gregarious. I've noticed myself being, especially like in like late 2018, I was very gregarious. I started a club that got 50 members like in the first 6 weeks. I was like, ooh, nice. And like, but
you got
yeah,
what?
things like, yeah, and
You got 60 members? What does that mean?
50 like members in my university club and everything like that. It was like in the first month.
Okay.
Yeah, so it was like it became like a really big club and all that sort of stuff.
And then you walked away from it because there was something else.
No. It was after a whole year that I walked away. It was actually after a whole year, and I got done what I needed to get done actually. But I've had other moments like that too, with some friends, and like needing to like interject them into like another group so we could like feel comfortable and actually enjoy our time. But yeah, that's just those any FE experiences aren't the best, but like it does make you. I could see the idea of it making you more invested, because it's like you feel this and you want to like alleviate this pain that you feel someone else feeling, so that you alleviate that sort of like vicarious pain that you feel too.
But you can become a sucker to that, because if you're around somebody that's always miserable, defines himself about being miserable, and doesn't want to change it, there's a nice little booby trap for you.
Yeah, I think with FE, I see this in Boris as well. I think me and Boris have like a similar thing where it's very, even if you don't want to, you're very quick to notice how everyone is like feeling, oh, this person like wants to talk now. Will I actually feel it? Oh, this person wants to talk now. I need to like wrap this up really quickly. You know what I mean? And then like pass it over. So that thing is, I feel, I don't see many other people like doing it. Like that moderating effect where you're like becoming aware, oh, this person needs this. And then you're like any channel changing to that topic. Oh yeah, this reminded, what about this? And it's very smooth, the transitions that I feel.
INFJ probably is equally capable, but because they're introverts and a little more reserved, they may not be as willing to do it. But I think they feel the same. Maybe Joyce can speak to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can feel the same way too. I'm trying to make sense of it all. So like when you're speaking, I'm like trying to like put it into my mental model. I'm like, how does this work together?
So whatever we say goes into your book.
We will
Guys,
be co-writers.
we
I would
made
like
it.
to be second, okay? Prem,
Yeah.
Scott, you can have
Would
third.
would you credit the sources, Joyce?
I'm okay with second best.
Nah, I'm joking.
See, that's going to drive her book sales because everyone she's ever talked to is going to check to see if they're in there.
Yeah. Page number 62, line number 5, word 3. This word I got it from Joyce. Got it from Prem, yeah.
Cool. And how is everyone's experience of introverted sensing, SI? Or did everyone answer the FE question?
Scott,
Scott, you did?
Scott?
I did, yeah.
That Jeffrey guy bailed, but that's okay.
I know, right?
All right then. SI guys.
No idea. Actually,
I don't know.
SI, what is that? Inferior function? Really?
So I can talk about my SI, but my SI is very much targeted for a very specific purpose. For me, here's what I want from life. If I get this, I'm done. I want to create, like, you know how you want to create a mental model for like MBTI typology personality. That's a consistent no matter who reads the book, right? You're on the same page. For me, I want to create such a model, but for suffering, So let's say, let's say now you're suffering.
To avoid
right?
suffering, though, not to. Now
to
really know how to suffer.
Whatever it is, right? To suffer or to avoid suffer, whatever you want to do with suffering, I want a very consistent, cohesive model. So my entire SI is around this one experience of me personally suffering, and then having like a TI model of experimenting. Okay, does this theory work? Why am I even suffering? What is the nature of it? What's the quality of it? And I'm like really going deep such that I can create a very consistent model of letting go. So no matter who uses that model, it should work. And it's not just it should work, there should be a reasoning as to why what works. You know what I mean? That's what's important to me. So that is like my SITI thing that I do. But it's very much niched into like, okay, I have this certain experiences that I feel intense discomfort with and I feel helpless against. Now, how do I change that relationship that I have with this experience such that I have a more fulfilling life, blah, 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 blah. That is like the core problem, right? But to like answer this, I go all the way. I go watercolors, I try to understand existence, like pure Tibetan Buddhism. I'm like exploring all these philosophies, but I'm using all the concepts to, in the end, find the most important concept and to create this SITI introverted model that keeps working consistently no matter what circumstances changes, That, if that makes sense. So that is my SI. I'm taking like this one experience, letting go, the suffering. And then I'm trying to like create a model, understanding it, and then ultimately becoming free, right? And not just it working, but also why it did work so that other people can replicate it, That in the end is what I want, like a step-by-step. Step 1, do this, step 2, do this. Oh, step 2 didn't work is probably because of this. You know what I mean? That's what I want from life. That's what this YouTube channel is about, pop-up existence, right? But plug in right there. But if that gives you a sense of understanding of what I'm actually doing with SI, introverted sensing, I don't even, I'm in Windsor for 1 year. I never explored the city. I just kind of explored the city. I don't care
it's also
about
COVID, right? I mean,
yeah.
that
Not
has
just
something
that.
to do with it.
Even when I did have the opportunity, I didn't explore surroundings. I'm not like an adventurous person.
But
like,
it's Windsor. I mean,
yeah,
it's not Toronto.
it is it is a good place. It has a river, you can calming whatever.
Whatever.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Right? I don't care that much about the surroundings, but I'm more intellectually explorative. That's like I feel that's a price I'm paying, and that's where I'm like more boxed in when it comes to the sensory. I think even Jeffrey mentioned it before. Like your sensory is very much like genre specific. Like I want to like learn music, but not just any music. I want to like figure out this Japanese music that I personally like and see what about this music and what about the sequence of the notes is resonating with me, and then creating a mental model with it. It's so personal, you see. There's nothing objective about it. Makes sense? No? Like,
It does. It does. I actually
Yeah.
feel like when we give the example of music,
Yeah.
I sort of do the same thing. Like you having this Japanese music, I'm very since I was a child, I was very attuned to Spanish music.
Okay.
Spanish music, pop, and metal. But it's been particularly this sort of dichotomy of like, say, like the more melodic and the more like aggressive. And Spanish music, particularly flamenco, is like something that I want to like master because it has those two elements of like this sort of like
Spice.
yeah, it's very aggressive, but also very like melodic and emotional and everything like that.
Tango music, right?
I'm more so focused on flamenco because it has these sort of elements that I feel that are connected to me, honestly. This sort of like fulfillment. Like I have this sort of notion of like, let's say I want to fulfill things that like are somehow connected to me or help me express. Like I find it easier to express like emotion when it comes to like when I have like some sort of like, you know, stimulus like music or some sort of medium. So for me, it's sort of like flamenco, and even just like in other notions of SI, I'm not sure if this is necessarily SI, but it's like this idea of like going through a path that fulfills what I wanted. Like I don't actually like to move forward without fulfilling something previously that I've wanted before. So even things like from my childhood, it's like, no, this still needs to happen. It's still like this, like I can't get rid of this sort of inner child that has this sort of that had its wants.
Yeah.
So like something that is it's something as even as minor as this little toy that I always wanted as a kid. I still gotta get it. It's worth $700 now. I gotta get it though, or else I'm not like, or else like I don't want to like go through my life like still thinking about this sort of thing. So
Yeah, I feel SI is a very nostalgic function.
Mhm.
I feel I'm very connected to my past, certain songs that I heard and hearing certain moments. It's all
Yes.
very like personal and nostalgic.
Yeah, like even my music selection is still fairly the same as it was when I was like in third grade, middle school. There's been some new additions, but they carry the similar theme of like it's either pretty aggressive or really melodic. Like it's either Sade or Disturbed. But but yeah, and SI though, I feel like it's developed more as I've gotten older, of course. And it developed more like the strongest when I was living a life that involved a lot of routine. It's sort of like when I got into the spiritual life a lot more, and I saw it make drastic differences in my life in terms of just like the notion of time being a little bit more pressing, or even just like I don't know, just like having things in order is like being a higher priority, and also time itself being a higher priority. And I've noticed this in like let's say my ESTJ mom's behavior. Time is a priority for her. Organization is a priority for her. And when I was like developing in let's say my spiritual development, like that sort of also those things were also becoming factors in my life. Like I started noticing like, yeah, I was more regimented. I was more orderly in my room. And it's actually shown now because like I used to have like a super messy room, but now like I have a fairly organized, appreciable room with like I have a shoe rack. That's my creme de la creme of organization. Have a shoe like they
What do you store on your shoe rack though? Books, CDs?
No, I used to store like just random stuff in there, but then I was like, no, this is meant for shoes.
No, it's pristine. There are no shoes on. Oh, never mind.
But yeah, it's like I started noticing like this is how like I see like the behaviors I saw in like my more SI developed mom that she's always had as a kid. I started developing those as well in terms of just like organization and even just like having notebooks to organize my thoughts and even just to make sure I get things done. Like I feel like this is so like necessary for like an ENTP. It's just like, hey, have somewhere to like, organize your thoughts, or else like sometimes you'll just like think that you have to do something, then you'll forget about it. And it's like hour later, maybe sometimes more. It's like, oh yeah, I had to do that thing. Or like, I don't know. I've often had these oh yeah moments of like, oh crap, that was on my schedule of things to do. But then like when I write it down or put it in a notebook, I have like this sort of checklist of things like, okay, checked it off. So I don't have this sort of like unfulfillment feeling that sort of like makes me sort of like, I guess, like regretful, or like just like repent. I guess almost like repentance is the word I'm trying to look for. Just like, hey, just making sure that what I like plan to do is fulfilled, even if like literally even promises that I made when I was a kid, I'm still planning on fulfilling them, because like otherwise I won't feel like my life narrative is complete. So yeah, that's just like my SI experience.
What about you, Boris?
Yeah, I mean, often I say flippantly, SI it's a store of what I consider to be the truth of the moment. And I didn't appreciate it too much. It's where all the routine lives that stifles the NE. But it's an important function. And also, I like that Hevander, when both of you actually brought up, it has some degree of nostalgia. And I think SI users, I associate SI at some level with having personal attachment to objects or to memories or to music, for example. Like there's certain songs from eons ago that I'm really attached to. I think an SI user or somebody that is in the grips of SI, they could really say, I really like this pen, and it's only this pen that I like.
Yeah,
hardware,
that
for
particular
example.
pen, not the brand, not the model, no, that pen.
There's a personal association, or I buy some hardware and it really gives me joy. I'm glad I bought this laptop, and I really love this camera, and I really look after it really well because I have an attachment to that thing. There was an interesting, this is sort of a tangent, Mythbusters. One of them is presumably ENTP, the red-headed dude. It's pretty obvious who's the ENTP. And he also, somebody pointed out how he really says, oh yeah, and I really like these pliers, and this is a tool I use. So there's I think, is having a personal attachment to objects or things of memory. You mentioned nostalgia is a nice thing, which I associate with some SI folks, because their place is always neat. They have a personal relationship to how they organize their space. I can appreciate it. I almost feel like if I'm in the realm of an SI, let's say ISFJ, high user, I feel like, oh my God, I don't want to be in here because I have to be careful that I don't destroy this thing that's so important to them, because I don't have enough SI to keep that order going, because the opportunity cost is I can NE and do other things. But it does definitely have value, and it needs to be there to balance NE, right?
Yeah,
and
I feel that is very unique. This personal attachment to the very specific thing. Yeah, I actually wanted to like buy a new earphones. I'm like, I really wanted this earphone to work. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You fix it if you can.
I'll give you actually a funny story. So one time I was using my phone and it, so I did something, it flew out of my hand. It flew out of my hand. I didn't throw it. And then it fell face down and the screen broke. You know what I mean? And
I've had that experience.
And I'm like, okay, I can replace the screen, but for the same price of the screen, I can buy a new phone.
But you replace the screen.
Yeah, and I'm like, you know what? I went to the guy, I said, okay, replace this screen. But he's like, this is so much money you can like get. I'm like, I don't want to deal with taking this data, then transferring this to like another phone, then making sure all the data is, I don't want to deal with that. You know what I mean? I want this phone to go. Then I got it replaced. Okay. And he's like, okay, whatever. He replaced it for me. Literally 3 days later, it again slipped from my hands.
No.
Face down, and it like broke.
It was begging you.
Yeah.
Please put me out of my misery.
Yeah, basically. And then I got a new phone, yeah. And
do you love it equally now, or it's never as good as the first time?
So funny story, that phone I slowly started liking it, and that broke. Then I got another phone that my brother was using.
I think you have an issue. You might want to get your
slippery hands.
Yeah.
Nerve conduction study. I hope there's nothing there, but you want to get that checked.
Right now, I put such a protective case. No matter what I do, the thing won't break. You know what I mean? I trust in the protection. Yeah. Yeah.
You might want to start wearing a bike helmet too, but I mean,
yeah, just in case.
And while you're at it, get some cellophane or aluminum foil. You never know.
Then I'll wear like a tinfoil hat and become a flat earther. Yeah.
Yes. No. But, even in like, so I'm just noticing that like Boris is wearing blue, but like I don't know, it's just this sort of idea of irrational attachment. But like I've always had this sort of like irrational attachment to like blue objects, like blue books. And like I have a bunch of blue books. Actually, I have blue sheets. I have blue rosary beads. I'm like no, and it's just like so. It's just like these strange.
But when I hear rosary, I think red, blue.
I know. No, but it's like a little like prayer beads and everything like that. SI habits, all right? But like,
You know what's funny?
but
Joyce is also wearing a blue shirt. Maybe she's
I
an
know.
ENTP, you know.
but it's
And
like
she's
it's
pulling,
it's
she's
a
pulling
light,
it to the side, and it's like
it's a light skyish, not quite sky blue. It's like a little bit like gray sky blue. I don't know. Like,
You know what's funny with that as well? I am personally attached to this particular clothes as well. That's why I hate shopping personally.
yeah,
I don't like going. I'm like, I like this particular shirt, and I wear the same shirt, you know.
yes.
I have
I've
shirts,
had
and I
the
keep telling myself, my TI's like, well, that's stupid.
yes.
You have all these other shirts. You should be wearing those other shirts, but I always drift back.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
It's
you
like
this
know.
is an
burgundy
SI
reds
love
or
fest, because
blues.
I agree with that. I have many shirts they're hanging around here,
Yeah,
but there's some that I'm really attached to the point where I can buy a new one. No, I'm going to put an elbow patch on.
Yeah,
This shirt is
yeah.
so old it's worn through, but I'm going to put one here, and I'm going to put I'm really attached
That
to
shirt
certain.
was all blue at one time. Those are all patches. That isn't a pattern on his shirt.
Yeah, that's wrong. As a kid, I actually was a hoarder of things, even things that broke. And I would like use them for my inventions and everything like that. It's like, no, I can just use it for one of my inventions. Like, you know, but it's like I remember I had to like forcefully get rid of that habit because like I wasn't even like actually like, you know, following through on some of the things I wanted to make. So I'm just like, okay, fine. I'll throw away all this random junk and wires and like broken toys with electrical parts that I wanted to use for later.
Yeah.
But, like I had that
We have to
previous
pay.
habit.
This is a cost we have to pay, Joyce, for having amazing any.
That you just constantly repurpose old things. You're like, oh,
Yeah.
I can make this old thing into a new thing.
I think that's that baby ISTJ that's living inside of us.
Yeah, honestly, because like I honestly enjoy it though. I enjoy those sort of like almost like what people would consider like ISTJ habits. Like I like fixing things, but like I just rediscovered that I did. And it's like, oh wow, I really like tinkering and like, you know, just like, oh, if it's broken, let me try to fix it instead of just like, you know, convincing myself that I need a whole new laptop just because the RAM slot broke. It's like, no, I will fix it. It's like a revolutionary idea.
Yeah,
Right?
this is the only reason why I love SE users, because they're like, oh, we're going to like this new place, and then they take me with them. And you know what's funny? I don't want to leave this room right now. In my head right now, I would rather read a book than leave this room and then just have a walk or whatever, right? But then when I actually do go for a walk, I'm like, wow, this is actually an amazing experience.
Yep.
But it's very hard for me to feel that from this moment. You know what I mean? But when I'm like put in a situation where I'm experiencing something new, I'm like, wow, I'm grateful that I'm getting to like
New input.
new
that's how I
sensory
look at it,
information, you know? Yeah.
Cool, yeah. And so thank you everyone for coming out and representing the ENTP populace. I realized because it's a male ENTP panel, people might actually want to know like what is like specifically a male ENTP experience. So do you think they're any different than the female ENTPs, or do you think
You
it's
know what's
exactly
funny
the same?
about that? I really feel male and female are just fundamentally so different. It's I'll tell you why. Because no, the way they like think is just super different. Because I was talking to my friend and she's a writer, and she was actually telling for me when I reached, we were like comparing stuff that we both consumed, you know, like comics. And when I look at her list of comics versus my list of comics, I could see my list of comics is more like this character is fighting and is this action sequence and is almost like fighting for something, this purpose, you know, drift. That's what I consume. But from her perspective, it's more like there's this character. This character has a backstory, and the character development is a really important factor. Is a really important component. You know, there are like lots of nuances like that. There's a book called written by a psychologist. Forget his name.
That narrows it down.
They're never right.
No,
That's right.
Joyce might know. I mean, she knows those three authors.
Doesn't matter, but I really do feel the way they just interpret the world is so different, because I feel we all have different drives too. That colors are the colors are the way that we actually use information and interpret information.
Anyone else wants to add?
Well, I do have like I've met 3 ENTP females. Well, like I'm actually like a close friend with one, and me and her are fairly similar. except she's the only thing that I feel like the only differences in this are because of just like life circumstances. That she's a little bit more like eat, pray, love. Like that's sort of her like philosophy in life, and mine is more like I got a duty. But like I was raised by an ESTJ mom who literally said like, "Oh, my son, I come here to conquer." So it's like I have this sense of duty, sure, like still like vicariously like accomplish her goals. No, but in like in temperament we're fairly similar, and even like in certain mannerisms and like our tendency to joke were fairly similar. Even like let's say with this other ENTP female that I knew, and she had like an ENTP brother. They were like the only difference was like feminine expression and mannerisms, and like but they're still equally as flamboyant, I could say, or like just like as like showy or expressive, and like also like what I really appreciated about her was like her intense interest in differential equations. So I was like, she's like, and like she would use the same sort of like gestures that indicate nuance that I would use. I was like, oh, that's something. And I was like, she's like, I really appreciate the particulars of differential equations, just like when you look at the cosine function. I was like, oh geez, and I was like I was flattered and a little bit cringed at like, oh crap, this is what I do.
Weird. Yeah.
Yeah, but like I've noticed like a lot of just easy similarities that I don't feel like I don't honestly to be honest I don't feel like the ENTP is the most masculinely divergent type. Like if I were to put it on this like sort of masculine feminine scale, it's like definitely more on the masculine scale, but it's not like the farthest end that like the ENTP female is like not that distant from an ENTP male and sort of like what mannerisms are going to be expressed or whatever. It's like even the ENTP females that I do know, they're fairly feminine. Like one is a little bit more tomboyish, but like I've noticed like two of like the four or five ENTP females I've actually seen, but I haven't necessarily like seen and talked to. It's like there were like a good bit of like it was like a 50-50 mix, or like more like a little bit more on the feminine side, and there's like two tomboyishes, but like it's still like you can clearly see there's these clear commonalities in behavior, or even like the inclination to like do some verbal quipping, or like some like verbal like jokes here and there and everything like that. Those are still fairly common. I just feel like maybe with some ENTP females there's a little bit more feminine vibrancy, or like the gestures, sure, but like I think we're fairly similar, I'd say.
Yeah, I haven't known as many ENTP ladies as I would like to. I've never dated one, but so maybe after this, no.
They're cool.
But I have to second Hevander's observation, because I mean, even on the, depending on how you define masculine, we're not knuckle-scraping guys going to a club. Like we're not the ESTP or the ESTJ. But I think we're sort of like the jokester, the guy who cuts you up verbally, who knows how to take advantage of the situation to come out on top, even though the jock stands in the corner and says, "What just happened?" Like, well, okay, this was a verbal fight. This was not a physical fight. But I have to second that. I remember one time very vividly, I went to a friend of mine, ENFP, she had a party, and there was a girl, she was very tomboyish, very much younger than I. Turned out she was actually an artist, so I'm like a science guy, so very different. But later on, I found out she was ENTP. But what I noticed is we were kind of joking around, and then there was this issue with the music. And we both were fascinated by it. Okay, we can fix this boombox. Oh, hey, wait a sec. Okay, let's fix it. And so we both, from different ends, we just grabbed different pieces. We met at the boombox and both had complementary ideas, and we fixed the boombox. And the way, oh yeah, let's do this. No, we need to troubleshoot it. Okay, there's something wrong in the Bible. It was just this natural, similar way of solving problems by pulling stuff into a room and being interested in that problem. Others were like, "Oh, fuck the music. What's wrong with the music? Let's play." But like, no, let's fix it. So we had like these 20 minutes where we fixed the boombox and made sure there was music, and had a real fun. It was very natural. So, and then later on, I found out she's ENTP, right? So that's my one experience where I would have to second Hevander. There's a lot of similarity, even though I mean we're closer to the middle, so it's easier to not be too different, right? But I would like to know more. It's just they don't hang out in our meetups apparently.
Yeah. I only know like one ENTP. I'm trying to think. Yeah.
I don't think I know. I don't know any. My sister's an ENTJ. That's a whole
very different.
Yeah.
The God of War.
Yeah,
very
right.
different.
Very different.
Well, thank you, ENTPs, for coming out and representing your type so majestically and with your quick verbal comments and the wordplay and the multiple things that you are interested in, the multiple instruments that Scott is attuned to, his guitars and bagpipes and other.
They may not
He's
be
played
in tune
with
at
them.
this
He
exact
has played
moment.
with them.
That's right.
And yeah, that was really cool. It's nice to see ENTPs having relationships with INFPs.
I do say I love INFPs. They're great people. They're just wonderful people in general.
We need to learn from Scott how to manage that FITI friction a little better. I tried. It is challenging.
Yeah, and Boris, you have quite the history with INFPs too. So it seems like
no wonder he
history.
hates that. Whenever he speaks about FI, I sense contempt. It's like
I just haven't mastered it like Scott has. I love connecting on the NE, but FETI at some point I have to walk away.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
FI,
I mean, it was maturity. Probably I was immature, not them.
Yeah.
Oh, that's such a FE nice way to placate and reframe.
It was me, not you. It's me. Yeah.
Nice. But yeah, so it was really nice getting to know y'all ENTP and all the tangents and the broadening and the branching and the never-ending conversation, because you always know more ideas to add on to it. It's wonderful. And yeah, Prem, thank you for visiting this channel with your pop-up existence, which you should all in the audience check out. He has these philosophical concepts that he will tackle about how you can find true happiness that is not externally dependent, but internally placed. And so if you have a void in your life and you feel empty, Prem has
I'm not going to fill it for you, but I can show you how you can fill it for yourself.
So what do you aspire to be? Being like a tapeworm? Because that's the existence you seek, right?
Yeah.
You're floating in a world that's kind of like the brown stuff, but you're self-content.
What can I say?
Yes.
Yeah. So if you have philosophical ponderings, go visit Prem. Thank you, Boris, for always being so funny that I laugh until I cry. And then it's
I didn't mean to make you cry. I
I
never meant to hurt you. I'm just a jealous. Never mind. This is an old song.
That's what he says to all of the girls that
Oh my
gosh, let them down slowly. I'm kidding. And so thank you, Boris, for it's never a dull day when people are around you. You are the glue of many social circles too. You may not know it, but yeah, you're very hands-off leadership, but people, they come to the Zoom meetup because they like you as a person. You give a good atmosphere and people gravitate around that atmosphere that you create. So you keep MBTI community alive in Toronto, and it's probably like the biggest North America meeting.
Oh, no. I don't think so. 1,000 inactive members.
You're doing something
Joyce,
right.
You got the power to outperform us all in time with your awesome little channel, right? And the book and
the book is something I'm waiting for.
Great things to come. No pressure.
No pressure.
Can you make it by mid-year, not end of year?
Can you give it to me tomorrow? No, I'm joking.
What about the book? Oh, never mind. Okay. It's okay.
Yeah.
Please go on.
And Hevander, I mean, we need to. I'm glad you showed up. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Because I forced you into this context, and he's such a busy guy, and he's working with his church group. And
oh my gosh.
What do you do for a job, dude? Exactly.
Oh, I actually work at the University of Maryland. It's like Mechie research. Yeah, that's what it is right now. But currently, I'm doing that little internship search for other jobs and everything like that. I gotta find some summer gigs that pay a little bit more so I can pay off this tuition. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's typically like data science stuff for software engineering.
We're all software. Look at this. It's kind of funny. We're all software.
Oh, we got rid of Jeff.
ENTP thing.
I'm doing data science. You're doing software. I actually wanted. Yeah.
Wow.
I actually wanted to deal with people and go that side, but then I actually was thinking, this job isn't that bad. You know what I mean?
And soon AI will be so good you can't tell the difference.
That's a goal, yeah.
Make it happen, Prem.
For,
Well,
for you, Joyce, just for you, I'll make an AI that types people and I'll give it to you. So you have the full
I find
ownership.
often when you look at ENTP, what do they want to do? I think software is not mentioned that often, but I think I've met a few. It's actually a field where we like to be, and it's not in popular culture because it's probably not in a coincidence, right? I'm guessing.
I think we are good at it, but I don't feel we want to do it. I feel it's more like, okay, it pays well, then you actually get into it. Because for me, the biggest barrier was the SI, getting the code, having organized. And in my head, if I want the code from start to finish, write that, and I want it just to work, you know. But coding is not that kind of process. You write something, debug, write something, debug, write something, debug.
I'm more like Scott. I build the big structure and I call it blocking it out, and then I fill in the gaps. I even set things for the future where I've written stuff and I feel really good. It's like, they're going to need this 6 months down the road. They're saying, what are you wasting your time on? Let me put that in there, because 6 months down the road, I don't even charge them. But then in 6 months, I can say, oh yeah, it's going to be a week. It's like, okay, well, now I can charge.
That's the moment. That's the moment. That's that's when it all kind of comes together. Oh yeah, I knew that was going to happen.
ENTP arrogance, but I just said it makes you feel good.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sorry, Joyce, we're keeping you up. This is your second show today, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
She's losing her clothes. Everything's falling down on her.
Yeah, I'm losing composure.
See, now we definitely know this part is going to get cut. You know.
No.
Bloopers. This is for the bloopers.
No, next thing you know, in the final shot, Boris is not even there. Yeah.
Then you say Jeffrey dropped out, then Boris dropped out.
Okay, about probable existence when they drop out too. It's like...
Well, Hevander, like, it was really nice hearing about your shoe racks and how
organization shoe racks.
Yeah, your organizational methods that are questionable, but also pretty interesting and fascinating.
It worked.
Let me think. What epitomizes SI for me? Let me think. Shoe rack.
Thank you for talking about the shoe rack, man. That's appreciated.
I love that Hevander had all that access to growing up as an ENTP. I thought that was really insightful that he was able to like remember back, how third grade, how he was feeling it, and at 18 how he was feeling it. I really appreciated that.
Yeah, it's very hard for someone to keep track of so many data points.
It really is. I have a question. So on the topic of organization and ENTPs, how many of you, when you don't have paper to write things down, do you just write on your body? You're like,
on my belly?
With what?
On your body.
Not
body.
But although whatever's at hand, I guess.
No.
I
might write it on someone else's body, but not.
I was about to say that. It depends.
Wait, just can I borrow your hand? Okay. Carrots.
And can you show me this?
While I have your hand, later. You have a very soft hand, by the way.
Yeah.
How does that feel?
Because I know some ENTPs and ENFPs, it's fascinating to watch. Like they're like, oh, I want to take notes, but I don't have anything, and then they just like start writing on their hand. And
I've done that actually. Yeah, but that's in the immature days,
I normally grab anything though. It could be like an envelope or something else on the desk, or like
receipts.
But not my hand. Receipts, yes.
Yes, like receipts are always handy. Like just have them strewn about your desk.
And you know what? I remember. Oh, I wrote this on this receipt. I remember how it looked. I know where I wrote it, and then somewhere in the pile over there, and I find it.
I hate writing on my body because I use gel pens. So if I start writing on my body, it stops working after a while. It just spoils the pen. It's not efficient,
Obviously, he's tried long enough to figure out, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I feel like organizations is so critical for ENTP to actually execute on his ideas. Like if you want to feel that sense of fulfillment from actually getting something done that you was in your head and validating the model worked. It's you gotta do some of that SI-ness, that sort of organizational skills to make sure you follow through.
Struggle.
Oh yes,
yeah.
time for me is a big struggle. But like, oh gosh,
But that's why software is so nice, because all you need is really, you can type away if you know your coding, and you can build what you want. That's why I like about, all you need is a laptop, what's in your head, and a few software components. It's super satisfying.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
Sorry, girl.
You should, you know, if you killed us right now for interrupting you, I wouldn't mind. Yeah.
Gil, that's quite extreme.
If she euthanized us, you know, with her needle.
No, just building off of that analogy, you know, you either use MBTI to like heal someone or just.
Well, if that's your kink, I'm kidding.
Oh my gosh. You see what we're doing to her? You see what we're doing to her now? It's like, if that's
No.
We don't let her go. That's just terrible. There's one INFJ in the room. The guys are just leeching
it's like,
onto
the
her.
INFJ?
You know what, Joyce?
That's literally how I am.
We don't deserve to speak anymore. Yeah.
Okay.
Take the show. Steal the show. Yeah.
Yeah, well, this was a pleasure. This was a joy, and you all are charming and charming.
What does that mean?
That's a
What do you
cute
mean
way
by
of saying
charming?
charming. No, I'm just joking.
Yeah, I had to make a new word for you guys because it was so charming that it
Yeah,
didn't
cute
fit in
and
your
charming.
vocabulary. Anyways, okay. Thank you everyone for watching. I'll see you all in the next episode. Bye everyone.
Thanks,
All
Joyce.
right.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Ahem. Well, of course I'm smarter than you. I'm an ENTP, but we can still be friends.
For that Einstein, Edison, mind frame. We're never gonna stop playing mind games. Talk till you get a migraine. So please bow when you utter my name.
Look, I'm a legend, a Zeppelin of logic. Never modest, chaotic, robotic. Enterprising, prizing the profits. Always hit the mark even when I'm off topic. I'm known as a troll and a trickster. My funny bone breaks foes into splinters. Cause I'm not above laughing at violence. Matter of fact, I'm the vilest nihilist. Cynicism is my religion. Mastered metaphysics much like a magician. Modus ponens is my hocus pocus. Talk a lot of shit but legit can't focus. Au contraire, I swear I'm no contrarian. Just a bookworm hunting for a librarian. ISFJ can make me souffles. Who is sweeter than a berry, but I'm not down for marrying. Cause I'm scared of commitment, calendars and various things. But I swear I'm a challenger. And I'm very Wikipedia.
For that Einstein, Edison, mind frame. We're never gonna stop playing mind games. Talk till you get a migraine. So please bow when you utter my name.
Most know I'm a master debater. Debated my masters, but waiting for later. A pro when it comes to procrastinating. Mindscape looking like a macramated. A million different hobbies, but I cannot do the laundry. I am probably a reincarnated Socrates, probably. No mere loser, philosopher. The devil's advocate, a lawyer for Lucifer. Acting nuisance, then I throw the deuces up. Not laughing at my jokes, better loosen up. Cause my mind, it knows no guidelines. When I rhyme the Einstein of my lifetime, say sayonara if you're feeling argumentative. My words are venomous, you're too sensitive. So I haven't cried since 12 years old. That don't mean that I don't got soul. At least not technically, because you can't prove a negative.